Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the TED Talk podcast. It's number 4, I believe. I don't know on which episode I am. I think it's number 4. And I have two lovely guests. Freddie, I assume you were ready. Now, for all of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to give you some context. So, when I mute myself in the starting soon, I just started waving at them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to wave at you and I'm going to wait for you to wave back. So I know you're ready and you're going to, and we're going live. Now, Brandon starts waving at me, and myself and Brandon have been standing there waving at each other for 20 seconds. Freddie just stands up the moment I start waving. He just goes away from his PC, and I'm there sitting like, what the hell is going on? Where is this dude?
I had to check my phone quickly, and my phone's on charge on the other side of the room. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I gotta go check my phone quickly. And as I stand up, I hear Freddie. I was like, yeah. And he's like, Ted's waving. And I was like, oh, okay, hi. But yeah, hello guys. Sorry.
Yeah, but Brandon, Freddie, I'm pretty sure that whoever, all of you watching can recognize them from, the casting scene. Freddie's already been on the show. He was on the second episode with Criff, so you are probably familiar with him. Brandon, I've wanted to have for I don't know, maybe a month and a half on, but we always had some schedule problems and issues and stuff like that. But you're finally here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for putting up with me because I know the scheduling's been a little bit rough, but I'm glad I'm here. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, we can talk about the majors or all things Counter Strike with you.
Yeah. Okay, so guys, because there's been gentlemen, there's been a lot of things happening around the major, but I want to start off with something else. Obviously, like most of the time, each time we start with an episode here, I just give some time to all the guests, say what they've been up to, plug something if they want to plug something. So, Brandon, we're gonna start with you. What you've been up to?
Recently, like over the past month, yeah, just been a lot of casting recently. Been involved with the CCT project a lot. Got announced as one of their content creators. Freddie alongside me is also doing that too. So I mean that's quite exciting. I mean that's been it's been a lot of work, a lot of behind the scenes, just kind of figuring bits out. But I'm excited to see where that develops over the next couple of months and the start of 2023. It's quite exciting, especially in the tier 2 space, getting a lot more recognition, kind of getting a lot more exposure, especially in the online scene. We're now transitioning tier 2 into a world where it becomes more offline, and that's quite exciting. So it's cool to kind of be a part of that. I was doing ESL Challenger Rotterdam recently, which is really cool. Managed to jump on WePlay. I know you covered a lot of WePlay as well. Ted managed to jump on that one just for a couple of days, did the gauntlet stage, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of been trying to dabble in as many Counter Strike fueled projects as I can.
Mm.
And yeah, some stuff coming up towards the end of the month, which I'm quite excited about as well.
Yeah, you went full-time casting really soon as well, right? A
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
people might not know that. You quit your full-time job and now you're just a caster.
I did, yeah. The first month was September.
Mm.
It's this whole thing's been a roller coaster, to be honest with you, Ted. Like, I first started casting. My first ever cast was with Freddie, and that was on the 6th of January. That was my first ever cast in Counter Strike. And yeah, now we're full time. It's crazy, but I'm just trying to live in the moment and see what happens, really.
Yeah, and imagine Freddie. He's unofficially quit uni to cast.
No, I'm still at uni.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
still
why I
doing
say
uni.
unofficially. That's why I'm
still
saying
doing it.
unofficially. Yeah.
My mom's been dropping a lot of hints recently because I've got two older brothers, and she like obviously they both graduated and they're doing quite well in like normal world stuff. So she's like, "Oh, I really wanted to go to the third graduation." And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, don't worry, you will get a graduation. Chris's son will give you a graduation, not me though. And I was, but yeah, I'm going through that now, like, because luckily because we've had, as the majority is CS, we've kind of had like 2 weeks off because of the major, and I've had all my midterms these past 2 weeks, so I've been able to like actually, I haven't had an excuse not to do university, so far it's gone well. Let's just hope it continues on that trajectory. But yeah, I've been, as I said, trying not to fail university. And then also with CCT, Brandon was saying as well, yeah, there's a lot that's going on with that as well. Just like it's just a lot of consistency. Yes, I think that's more the thing of like,
Yeah.
I think I've got like 20 best of threes from starting this Thursday for like the next 3 weeks. So it's just a lot of back-to-back CS pretty much. But it's interesting because it's like different regions. You were talking about like the move from like the more exposure to tier 2, and it's more exposure to different scenes as well. It's like South America. I have never watched a single South American game until this summer, pretty much because like why would I? That is and there wouldn't have been a need. But since summer and since now we're going into the third South American series, I've been just like watching a lot of South American CS because I enjoy watching it now, and it's put a lot of light to just a lot of those regions and a lot of those players. And yeah, move offline. Malta just got announced for the first LAN in Central Europe for the Central Europe. So I think the online stage is actually rounding out very soon. It ends on like the 18th of December, which is then pretty much the player break. I don't think the dates are announced for it yet, but it is going to be in Malta, which is really exciting. And you might see us there, you might not. I think if you are going to see me there, it might be in a different role, so that'll be very interesting as well. But yeah, on top of casting, I do a lot of stuff around journalism. So I just had an article I was very happy with Reese yesterday, actually. The one with like just talking about the new Royals roster and
Yeah.
the impacts
Oh,
that
I
has
saw
to the
you
UK.
did it. You did the article you posted for UKCS, and you were like, the title was decided to do something different.
Yeah, like it was. So I started off just doing a normal roster report, and because the reason why I like working at UK, so I'm a senior writer at UK CS:GO, and the reason why I like working there so much is because we have a lot of freedom just to do whatever I want. So I started with a simple roster report, and then I turned it pretty much into an opinion piece, talking about how
Yeah.
like just the history and then the impact it has on the UK scene. That like, oh look, we've got another unorged CS team that's like trying to become one of the best in the world, trying to play full time, but there's just no money in the scene. So it's like looking at the problems of that. But yeah, that's quite interesting. And yeah, it's pretty much it. Journalism, casting, bit of uni, kind of splash in there a little bit. And jersey collector. I've got one of my favorite jerseys on today. I've got the EG. Got John. It's the one John G gave it to me in Sweden. It's pretty
Yeah.
nice. Got John G JLC on the back. Big up to John G.
Yeah, we saw it
My-
before the
my-
start. I have the Cirque one, the OG one, but
You
it
got the
doesn't.
old one.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't have Overhampton on it yet. And I actually like the Wolves one more. I like it better.
Yeah, the Wolves. This is, but I mean, like for someone who doesn't realize the Wolves EG thing, they're just owned by the same company. It's like that's public as well. That's not like a thing.
Oh
that
yeah,
I've
yeah.
leaked
It
Like
happened
it's
like a year
they're-
ago or a year and a half ago.
Yeah, so I find that like I find that was maybe like people were a little bit misled a little bit by the community. It's like, oh my god, look at this, EG and Wolves are joining up, and it's like realistically they're just owned by the same people.
Yeah, but they're still joining up in a way. I mean,
Yeah, still they're
it's
doing
still sick,
content together. It's
and
cool.
you have
It's so
like
cool.
FaZe and Man City and all of those, working together.
That's been years. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
been,
yeah,
They've been doing stuff
exactly.
since like 2017.
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
cool.
which is sick, which is really sick.
Yeah, it is cool. It's definitely cool to see. But yeah, sorry, that's enough of my antics out of the way.
Yeah, but it's no, it's cool. It's cool. It's you're supporting the John G camp, let's say. But going into gentlemen, there's been a bit of an interesting CS:GO tournament. I don't know, you might have seen something about it. It's called a
Maybe.
major that ended yesterday, actually. And I want to start you off. I was thinking about having a nice little build up, starting from the challenger stage and then going through all the teams and be like, okay, what you think about those guys, those da, 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 da. But there is one question, or rather a couple questions, that I want to start off with. First of all, Brandon, I'm gonna start with you. Was that the most boring major final ever?
It's up there. I feel like though you call it boring, but at the same time, yeah, it didn't have those highlight moments. It wasn't a blockbuster free mapper, but outsiders, it was boys versus men on that server in the finals. It was actually incredible because I said this literally. I was just on Jay's podcast, and I'll say again here. Like I thought that Furia heroic game, whoever won that was going to win the major, and the fact that heroic, they survived the adversity. Furia, they mount this amazing comeback on Ancient. Heroic close it out, and then they go and stomp on the final map. I was like, damn, they've answered their critics, they've answered their demons a little bit. They're gonna move forward. And like let's get this out the way. I had Heroic in my pick'ems, and just I've said this quite a few times, just in general. I had Heroic to win the whole thing. I thought that this would be their best opportunity to go on a little bit of like a dark horse run and potentially just go for it and potentially do it. But the way Outsiders set up the whole thing was just incredible. And yeah, it was a little bit of boring CS. Sure, it wasn't the grand spectacle you kind of expect. Sure, that's fine. However, they went there, they got the job done, and arguably that's even more impressive to me that they kept it that controlled the entire time. It was
Mm.
game face from round one. They had a clear game plan. James hitting these incredible shots, just not reacting because that's a job to do. And I find something incredibly just rewarding in watching that as well. So yeah, I agree. It was a little bit boring in
No,
terms
you
of
know
like
what?
the
I'm not
entertainment
stating
value,
that it was the
but
most boring for me. I'm just asking you because that's been,
I think
that's been the most, well, it was the most popular question on Twitter, especially
yeah.
after the end of the game. It was, do you think that this was the most boring final we've actually had?
I think for me, because I'm so nerdy when it comes to Counter Strike, it's like
Mm,
I love the way that that whole game was called by
yeah.
Jame. So for me, no, I didn't think it was that boring. But I am very much in the detail, very like looking at everything on like a. I'll get my magnifying glass out. I'll look at it on a real micro level. So yeah,
Mm.
that was nerdy CS. I enjoyed it.
Freddie, what'd you think
I
about
didn't
it?
watch it.
Okay, you didn't watch the final.
Yeah, no, I had work to do last night, and I genuinely sat there and I was like, this game just doesn't entice me, like at all.
Oh, okay. I guess that
And
answers the
like,
question in a way.
yeah, like I just looked at like in my head, I like the crowd wasn't that great either, was it? Right?
Yeah.
Like there wasn't really. So like I was like, oh, the reason why this movie's been so good is like the Furia heroic game. I watched all of it and I was like, oh my god, this is so sick. Like the crowd's so cool. Case is having like he's like this guy, like Jesus Christ, he's good, isn't he? Like he's good at the game. Um, it's a sick game. Crowd's sick. I looked at the finals. I went, Outsiders are gonna win this. Don't really watch it. I think we got through halfway through the challenger stage, and I genuinely I looked at it and I was like, yeah, Outsiders won this major. I was like, they are playing some serious good Counter Strike, and it just got confirmed like by their bracket. Like as much as I love Fnatic, you put them up against Fnatic, and in every single scenario, Outsiders are just better in every single way,
Yeah.
and it showed so much on the server. I was like, it was funny. Mezzi was saying, he was like, it's like, because Jame was like in the post match interview, he was like, oh, it was a close game. Like the score line doesn't really depict what happened. And Mezzi went, oh, I thought it was quite one sided, but okay, sure, Jame, whatever you say. And like, yeah, like they just kind of came through and swept everyone. And I think it was kind of their major to win. And I think Heroic, that might be, I think for someone like Cadian, that might be his chance, I think, for the major.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think with someone, with like everyone on Outsiders, maybe, I guess, yeah, everyone outside, I feel like we could see them in another major fight. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
for
out of
sure.
the
They
extreme.
have
Like,
they have years to come.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess as well, like, you know, you have people like Yabi, so you have some of like the other Danish players in that team that probably could, but someone like Cadian, I think
I
that's
think he's
probably his
the
one
only one.
chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was probably like he had a chance there, and I think that may be his chance like gone. Whereas like I assume we'll see in some way some of the other players there. But yeah, no, like I genuinely just looked at this matchup and I was like, I have other stuff to do. I just this doesn't even nearly want me to. I just don't want to watch this.
Okay. I guess that's pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, you look at
Mm.
a major final and be like, "Oh, I can't be asked to watch it." I actually am. When it comes to my position about that, I'm actually willing to like Brandon. I'm on your account. I watched the final because it's a major grand final. I
Yeah,
couldn't
of
miss
course.
that in a million years, no matter how boring it could be. But I was actually expecting the game to be a lot closer. Initially,
Yeah,
I
100%.
thought that I was expecting there to be one-sided map if Heroic were to crumble as they did against Fury, right? So I was thinking maybe if Heroic flop a big lead and then actually end up losing the map as well, that's gonna be game over because Jame is a lot more composed. He's really chill, and if something like that happens to him, he's not really gonna be phased by it, right? He's gonna be really quick to recover, and that counts for everybody on his team. It's kind of like his and Kickert's energy just absorbs into everybody else, and they're a lot more calm about what's happening. Whereas for Heroic, I was like, if they start well, I think they'll do well the entire game. If they start badly, they're gonna do really bad. And it's kind of disappointing to see them getting absolutely styled on map number 2. But I think that had a lot to do with as Brandon said, because obviously for those of you that did watch the game, it was a little bit boring in terms of the atmosphere I wanted more of. I'm really unhappy with how many people turned up into the finals, simply because I feel like this is just respect shown to the players that made it there, because it's not their fault that they're not Brazilian. I mean, they still did give their best and still played to the final. I understand why the fans didn't turn up as much. but still would have liked to see, you know, a full arena. But I think that Jame, like overall, he just proved one thing. First of all, clarifying something, he is the first Russian oper to win a major, by the way, and he's only the second oping IGL to do so after Fallen. There hasn't been a lot of
Big,
those.
big boost to fill. It's big. I think like the AWP IGL meta is kind of coming back into like you see it a lot. Like Cadian, for instance, AWP IGL.
Oh, that's the first time, by the way, in the history of CS we've had two oping IGLs in the major grand final as well,
Yeah,
which is an
I like
interesting
it.
prospect.
I really like it. I think it's an. I think it's an. I think AWP IGL is such a powerful role. Like so
Mm,
powerful.
that's actually a good take. You know, we can chat about this a little bit. I actually had this planned out for later on, but I saw a cool take from MSL on Twitter, you know, regarding this, because you know he was obviously an ex Nord IGL. This is when he became famous. He was on Dignitas as well back in the day, but he had a take about that and saying because in the latter stages of his career might have not been as successful. He did win one tier 1 tournament, being an Oper IGO in Stockholm. I think it was a DreamHack Masters with Nord, but he had a take that he thinks that it's a lot easier to, well, not a lot easier, but it's really suitable for an IGL to be the Oper as well, because then you get to, you know, coordinate the entire play of the team around you, and you get to have an Oper that's really well controlled and really suitable for your for the way that you want to play the game in your structure, because you're the oper. I mean, you're gonna do what the structure needs. So this is actually an interesting take. I'd really want to hear your opinions on that. What you think about the opening IGL?
I think especially with AWPers, the you have the what makes a good AWPer is being able to make decisive plays and being able to do things without being told to do that. And when you're in a position where the IGL is the AWPer, so then you don't have to be told what to do because you're already being like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. Having the whole game plan almost built around that AWP, I feel like is really effective. And yeah, like I feel like especially at lower levels, having an AWPer that isn't maybe as mentally in place can be really,
Mm,
really challenging. And it should never be a problem at tier one. Like naturally, you should never have an AWP that needs to be told what to do. But I think especially when you've got a whole clear game plan built around this AWP, and the AWP is like always kind of maneuvering around, I feel like it's just so powerful. Like it's just yeah, and it showed. I guess like you've got two AWP IGLs in the finals, and like Fallen's won like what, three majors, two majors? I can't
two,
remember
yeah.
actually. Two. And like you're starting to see it in I love it in Brazil. Like there's just so many AWP IGLs now. Like it's I genuinely think Fallen has had some sort of like ricochet effect on that like scene. Like in South America, the amount of like AWP IGLs there are. But even in Europe, like you're starting to see it quite a bit more. And I think it's just I don't know. I think it's very effective. Like Artist in the UK, it's a good example. He's one of the plays for one of the best teams, if not the best team in the UK, AWP IGL.
Brandon?
It's interesting. I feel like that there's a lot of different kind of takes you can go with the AWP
Mm,
IGL, and there's also a lot of different things that kind of conflict with it. I think AWP IGL, and if done in the correct
Mm.
structure, can work incredibly well, and I kind of agree what Freddie is saying. But at the same time, there's a lot of pressure for. You always have this debate, right? Who's your in-game leader that can also put up the numbers? You look at
Yeah.
2022. A direct comparison would probably be um, Carrigan when FaZe. We'll talk about FaZe later on, but the fact that they were
mm,
having good success is because Carrigan was also putting up the numbers.
yeah.
Compare and contrast that with maybe I'm not going to single out Hooksy. I'm just going to just
No,
drop
you,
his name
you
there.
can
But
you can
I don't
because
want
like modern
I don't want
CS, modern
yeah,
CS needs your IGL to be able to put up at least like 10,
yeah.
15 kills a map.
And then but also like Alexi B, right?
Hmm.
That vein of IGL where like strategically they're pretty spot on, but they don't really put up the numbers. You're then putting that pressure on the most heaviest investment in the game then being on your shoulders. And if your AWP
Yeah.
kind of falls off a little bit, that's not ideal. And
Yeah.
also, you need to have that might negatively impact the cooling as well. I feel like if you can be an AWP IGL, yeah, that's an amazing thing to have. But that's why it's so rare because it's so difficult to have
Yeah.
that
Mm,
fine balance. And also, what you got to consider as well is the fact that even if an IGL such as we'll call it Alexi B, for example, just in general, just when we're comparing these IGLs, if he has an off day, well, he can rely on his AWPer to maybe pick up the
yeah,
pieces of
they
it.
can they can still win the game without him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, yes, it is a good thing to have if you can, but that's why it's so rare because it's
Yeah.
so difficult to find someone that has a astute mind for the game, controlling all of the pieces. Secondly, being a good AWP player. Thirdly, then controlling your decisions and basing the game plan based off your strategy. And I feel like that is why Outsiders had so much success because it's this core philosophy that Jame has, and his players need to buy into this system. It's not just Jame having this one idea
Yeah.
and people go, okay, yeah, let's try it. It's everyone is so involved. Everyone is so believing in the project and the way he constructs the game, which is why it's so successful. But that is why it's so rare because it's so difficult to kind of try and balance all of these things. It's like the Infinity War meme where it's like perfectly balanced as all
Yeah,
things
yeah,
should
yeah.
be. It's very difficult to achieve that, which is why AWP and IGLing is very rare at the upper echelons of CS.
Mm.
I think the one thing I will say on that is I agree with what you're saying, but especially taking someone like Alexi B and Hooksy, their IGL styles I think are very like they take a lot of they do a lot. Like they're very micromanagey, especially
Yeah,
Alexi B is very micromanagey, and I think that will always take away from the fragging. And like Mezzi has spoken about how like he wants to be the fragging, like the fragging IGL, and he can't do that if he's micromanaging people. So I feel like when you talk about these AWP IGLs, you can't. If you're an AWP IGL, you have to be a free flowing IGL because you can't like on like kind of just building on Brown's point, you're kind of isolated into one style of calling. So I don't think it's possible to be a very heavy-handed AWP IGL. I think a great
Well,
example in tier two
Jame is
actually is
there.
Stevo. Yeah. Oh, wait, is he?
Well, he's kind of well. I'd assume I don't know what's going on in their team speak, but I'd assume
Yeah.
he's really like Outsiders is one of the most, if not the most, well structured team right now in the world. So
yeah, they are.
I'd imagine that Jame when he has like I think I completely agree with what you're saying. It's really hard, and I completely agree with what Brandon is saying. That's why I think there's a really good point that could be made
Yeah.
that one is an OPER first and an IGL second, right? So if you can't be if you're already an OPER, you can learn to be an IGL. But if you're like, let's say an Alexi B or a Hooksy, you can't learn to be an OPER. Could you imagine an Alexi
Res.
B or Hooksy oping? Well, yeah, and that helped. Yeah, that worked out quite well, didn't it? I mean,
They gave
it's
him like a
really
month
tough,
to
but
learn how to AWP.
yeah. But as an OPER, like you get that's the risk though, right? Because you can't afford to go silent. You can't afford to get the mood down after a couple wrong calls, or if you're having a bad day, you can't afford to get into your head about it and be like, okay, they might carry you sometimes. They might be able to pull it through. There's a couple teams that don't really rely on their opers that much for the hard carry, and they're a little bit more focused around the rifles. Okay, fair enough. Astralis, they didn't make the major, but they still play like that sometimes. But it's like I feel like this is why it's so impactful as well. What Brandon said pretty much it's a high risk, high reward scenario. If you have the trust in yourself, and you need to have everybody else trust you as well, because like those are two roles. I'd say that those are the two most responsible roles in a team. You are the
Literally.
IGL. That's the first person that everybody's looking at when something's going wrong. They're like, help us out. What's going on? And the coach, obviously. And then you're the oper. That's the guy that everybody's looking towards once again when things are going wrong. They're like, you have to step it up. You have to carry us through the game. And you're both those people in one person. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Hard. It's definitely hard.
sometimes it could be overwhelming. But then if you're a really calm guy, and I think that's why, by the way, Jame is so good at it, because he's really chill. He doesn't seem phased
So
by it.
calm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that helps out massively, right? Because you just don't get into your own head all too much, or at least if you do, you don't let anybody else notice it, so it's fine.
I feel like with outsiders, to be in that team, you have to have such a clear mentality of how you want to play CS
Mm,
because they play such a specific style and specific way that like you have to have every single play. I think that might be why IGL might be a little bit easier because you have 5 people with just such a similar mentality on how to play the game. But like Jesus Christ, that Jame guy, like he hits the most unbelievable like last one shot on a 1v3 I've seen in like the semi-finals of a major. And he's just like, and I'm
Just
like,
what
oh,
to do.
okay, yeah,
yeah,
sure,
that's
fine,
the
yeah,
strat,
you know,
You just
yeah.
save in 99% of the rounds, and then the 1% you go for it. They're like, okay, guys, it's a 3v1. It's James. He's not gonna go for it. Okay, I died. But he's still not gonna go for it. There's not a lot of time. Okay, I died as well. It's a one
I think
versus
like
one.
I
Shit.
made a more reaction than like he did, and I was like,
Oh,
oh,
for sure, for sure.
for sure. Like I was like, that is actually an unbelievable shot, and then he's just there, like stone cold, and I was like, yeah, honestly, fair play.
Yeah,
But their T sides are so good. They're
yeah.
seriously, they've cracked the code on T side, just full stop, and it's worked. Like it helps as well when you've got a good game plan and just your whole team shoot back. That does help. Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon, as Brandon said, against Heroic, I think that was the perfect example of Jame outcalling completely Cadium. But now that we've had, our
Fnatic
word
as well.
because I wanted to, yeah, they absolutely annihilated them. But after having a bit of a word about outsiders, we're gonna get into the playoff teams after that because I kind of wanted to start from the final and how did you guys find it because it's really fresh and we just seen it a couple hours ago. But now I want to actually start you off with from the get go of the major. Obviously, the first thing that we did manage to see was the contender stage. I'm not sure if there was so many surprises there. To be fair, well, you're gonna let me know if you were really surprised. There was maybe a couple teams that you might have expected to do a little bit better. So I actually want to hear your opinion on this one first, Brandon.
Sorry, I kind of zoned out a tiny bit. Contender stage. All right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I called it.
So this is
It's probably my
so.
fault because I called it challenger stage, but I'm still at that
Oh,
mindset.
challenges. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like,
This is the MOUZ 3-0 Imperial 0-3 Nation.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. I mean the talking points. I guess to start things off, you look at Vitality and Cloud9 scraping it through. Very rough, very difficult. And then you look at a team like MOUZ that go 3-0, completely walk it. They then become semi-finalists here at the major. I mean, no, not many surprises. I guess you can argue. Obviously, the like Cloud9 upset with losing to Greyhound, that ruined a lot of pick'ems. That is definitely an upset. But also, you got to kind of think if Shiro doesn't time out in that 17-17 3 versus 2, do they win it? Probably, considering he's having basically a major MVP performance. So that's a little bit rough. But I
Sure
mean,
played well.
he played very well. We can kind of talk about Cloud9 as this develops because obviously we're now talking about Challenger. But I feel like zero Nation, rough one. Dumao didn't really step up to the plate. You've got a really good argument between. You look at Brazilian teams, you think, oh, how are they going to perform under the crowd? What you got to bear in mind with these Brazilian teams is Imperial, 0-0 Nation. They're going up against like tier 1 competition, such as your Outsiders, your Furia, your Fnatic, your Vitality, your Cloud9. Like it's always going to be difficult for them, and the crowd, whilst it does influence a little bit, when you've got players like Taco, Cold Zero not stepping up to the plate, when you've got Dumao being really inconsistent, that's really rough, and that's always going to be very difficult for a team like 0-0 Nation to ever kind of make it through this stage. And it's disappointing they went 0-3, but I mean, someone's got to, right?
Yeah. I actually had an interesting take on the Brazilian teams. I want to hear your opinion on this one. Because from what I've seen, like what I think happened there, I think the only two teams that could actually get beneficial influence by the crowd from South America were actually Fury and Imperial, and I think Imperial, they just lost because they're not as good as the rest. That's it. I mean, they still got the crowd boost. It's not like it phased them in any way. But then you look at teams like 9Z and 0-0 Nation. I'd say that for them, it actually makes it tougher to play in front of the crowd because they feel like they have so much expectations that they need to cover. And then you know what they say. As much as the screaming crowd can boost you up, there is no silence that is more painful than the one of a crowd that was just cheering for you and now is completely gone.
I think what's funny as well is for Imperial is that they've never actually performed well kind of on home soil. Like they choked a final, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Belo Horizonte.
I think it was, yeah.
They choked that playing in front of Brazilians, but yeah, they're just not up to the caliber. Like it's a nice story. It was really good that they got there. It sucks for complexity at the RMR, but at the end of the day, this major you needed Imperial at the major, and if anything, we can talk about crowds, we can talk about atmosphere, but the fact that we had a crowd for the challenger and the legend stage.
Oh, that
That
was
should be
sick.
pretty cool because
Yeah.
that was an incredible atmosphere,
Mm.
and yeah, I got nothing but praise for that decision. That was really good.
Freddie, you're gonna add
I
on?
ha I have an interesting take that
Okay.
I want to hear your opinion. I was thinking about this last night.
Okay.
So, from my mentality, the reason why these international events are so good is because you have teams from these different regions able to travel to normally the likes of Europe, because that's where the majors tend to be. So you have, and even like Blast, all those things. You have the 9Zs, the Greyhounds, the 00 Nations, the IHTs, these teams from underdeveloped scenes that are, I think, in the words of John G, 2 steps behind every EU team. You go into Europe and you're able to prac against like such a wide variety of teams. However, I feel like I don't quite know how to word this, but like you see a Greyhound, they come to Brazil, they're not gonna have the same level of prac partners as they would if they went over to Europe, for instance. And a lot of the teams that were playing in the Legends stage. So I know like Navi literally got to Brazil like 2 days before they started playing or something like that. So like you have a lot of these teams who aren't like the best in the world is not in the region yet to prac against, and the teams you're pracking against are just not on the same level as some of these European teams. And I think it's an interesting thing I was thinking about of like, is there maybe a negative impact of having a major in one of these regions on just the basis of having, because it's so important, teams go over to places like Europe and bring stuff back?
Mm. I'd say of course. I mean, but it's like I don't think having the major there actually does have a negative impact, because I wouldn't say that if you're a team, boot camping and preparing for a major, you'd wait for, the last couple of days to add on something. So you have your time to play UCS, and then you travel there, and you have some
It's
you
more to
can.
bring back, I think. It's more to like you prac into other teams and like bring something back, and that's something that
You're
Yeah.
Tairu,
gonna you're gonna
uh,
bring back experiences from playing the matches.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, as well. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you kind of learn from the games once you're there, but all the pracs that you're going for against teams are done in the moment that you get on the airplane most of the
Yeah.
time, right? So and that's why you see the reason. Let's say, I'd assume obviously for teams like Navi, like Spirit, all those European teams that did participate in the Legends stage directly. For them, it was absolute it was absolute heaven to stay in Europe for a bonus 1 week, right? Because everyone else that's playing on the major is already out. And then you get to play in EU, even if you don't have those teams on your screen right now in the region, you still have a lot more to play against on Prague that
So
are
I
going to
mean,
be
you
doing a
you
good
have
job.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, you literally
exactly.
have like anyone.
Yeah, yeah, you can prac against everybody, and they're not going to be at the major, so you actually have a playing field. So that's something good.
Yeah,
But
actually.
in the meantime, I think that's why we saw so many teams that actually made it through the challenger stage, go into the legend stage, and go into the champion stage as well. Because as you get that experience on stage, this is a lot more impactful for, let's say, a team like C9, like Vitality, even though they went out 1-3. But normally they are a team that progresses quite nicely through the tournaments, right?
Yeah, I think it was that's a sign I saw as well, like because someone was like, "Oh, Cloud9, like they're gonna be like really shook up after like not doing too well as they would have wanted, going 0-2 early on." And I was like, "No, they've already had that experience. They've been able to mentally reset. Yeah, they're gonna mentally reset. However, they still have 5 games they've played on a stage. Like that's
Right.
so helpful, and it showed, I guess. Vitality, I guess, are kind of are the example of it didn't show.
Mm.
Oh, I got such a sad thing about Vitality because I
Uh,
feel like OG should have won that series 2-0, like against Vitality. They just should have. Like
yeah, map two
that's
was.
a that's a really rough best of three,
Mm.
and it's Vitality's experience. It's also Magisk being fucking insane on that
Mm.
overtime of
Magic's
Vertigo.
playing Magis.
I think he got like back to back 3Ks or 4Ks on the CT side of Vertigo overtime,
Yeah.
and then OG come out second map, just absolutely stomp Vitality, sets it up nicely for Dust 2, and it's just rough because like you look at it and you're like, damn, like OG could have won this series 2-0.
Mm.
But it was that scout round as well, just from Xiaowu, and it's just the experience coming through, and then you get to the legend stage, and Vitality already, the highs of Vitality are very high, the lows of Vitality are incredibly low, and that's why it's difficult to kind of predict where this team's gonna fall in. I feel like I put them through on my pick'ems. I was like, oh, maybe they'll just kind of like sharpen up. Maybe it'll be a repeat of the last major where Apex will sit down with the team and be like, okay, guys, let's like fix up our attitudes. It just didn't happen. It was just a bit unfortunate, but yeah, that one hurts for me in that challenger stage. I feel like OG should have gone through.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask
Yeah,
you what you think about OG and EG.
as in like teams.
I'd say
Yeah.
Gamer Legion as well. Well, I'd say performance on this tournament, and maybe you can make some takes on based on
Yeah,
that about the team. But I'd say like those are the three teams that might have, you could make a point about them making it through. I think 0
yeah,
Nation and Imperial, they were clearly not as good as the competition. I think same for IHC, even though they were able to beat 0 Nation, it was kind of obvious that they're just one level below, but they still did a good job. Same for Greyhound. I'd say 9Z, pretty self-explanatory. They just couldn't handle the pressure at all. But teams like Gamer Legion and OG were just one scrap away from winning it.
yeah.
And then you had EG, who didn't actually look that terrible in all their games.
No, they didn't. I feel like if we take all one of these and do like a little bit of a quick fire, I feel
Mm,
like 9Z outperformed my expectations. I expected NQZ and Buddha not to rise to the occasion. They did. They performed very well. So
yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised with how 9Z did. Yeah, just don't really have all the right pieces to get them over the line, but it's still a experience they're going to treasure forever and cherish because they're playing in front of a quote unquote home crowd. But wins against they smashed Imperial, by the way. That game was not even close. That
Yeah.
was a really cool statement as well. And then fell flat in the best of threes. Like it happens, but they still showed up. You take a look at EG, I had them for 3-0 because I looked at the matchup sim and I was like, potentially they could do it. They nearly beat MOUZ in that Mirage game. Scoreline doesn't look close. They were
Yeah.
coming back from that.
Automatic, man. Automatic.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal player. Give that team a little bit of time. We'll see how it
Mm.
goes. I feel like it's people will be calling for roster changes and stuff like that. I've got somewhat of an opinion on it, but I'm gonna hold my tongue and say, do you know what? Give them a little bit. Let's see. Let's see how it goes. Give them a little bit of time. See if Hext can kind of develop a little bit, come out of shell a little bit in this roster as well. Cirque is showing up a little bit more. We're kind of seeing why he's still that AWPer for Evil Geniuses. Breeze is sometimes there, but now needs to be constantly there
Mm.
rather than just a sometimes. But they're heading in the right direction. And yeah, it was one of those teams where it's like they could potentially do it and they couldn't. Turns out they couldn't, but they're on the right path. And for Gamer Legion, this project, it was never supposed to be a short-term success story. It was always supposed to be a longer term plan. Ash and Shuhei sat down together. They picked out the pieces for what they wanted directly.
Shuhei.
Shuey.
Shuhei,
Yeah.
Shuhei. Um, regardless, picked out those pieces,
Yeah.
said this is going to be a longer term project. They played in the RMR's open qualifier just to see what they'd achieved. They made it through. They then go all the way through and they go 2-0 up, I think it was.
Yeah. They were
Yeah.
2-0 up, and then they lost 3 BO3s in a row.
When you look at that on face value, you think, okay, that's unfortunate. They should have potentially tried to make it through, faltered in the best of threes. But you look at this team, you look at the development of how a team in under a month can then appear and look really good, not only in the RMRs but just in the challenger stage in general. There's a bright future for this team, and
$100.
I feel like then that those players aren't going to get poached. They're going to stay together. They got Espo coming up in just a couple of days,
Yeah.
so it's exciting to see how they perform. I think they're going to go into 2023 with a really refreshed and confident attitude.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that any of these players get poached. Like this Game Legion team is so interesting. I think like Imme is so cracked, and him and Isaac had like some really just good. I think for them as well. Like we're talking about experience. Like I think for everyone on this roster, this experience would be so good. The only problem I had with potentially was Acor and his performance with the AWP, where in the RMRs he was like stupidly good and was like 1.2 rating or something like that, and then went over to the major and had like just didn't really have that same flair as he might have had at the RMRs. And that could just be the fact that like he's playing against other players like better players. With that said, he played really well into Vitality though. So like I think this team. I think if A Core can find maybe like that consistency across everything, it's this team that's only going to get better and better.
Yeah.
The only problem I may have is this team just playing on like this mad honeymoon phase? Is this team just like I don't want it to be, and I don't think it would be, but I think it's something that you have to talk about in the conversation, being like, is this team just having like absolute vibes right now?
Yeah.
Well,
And
you
that is I think something that this Espo, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
SPU,
Yeah.
SPO, yeah.
Espo. Yeah.
Espo. I think that's like this, like that will show, I think, a lot, because you're playing against like Ents, Big Sprout among Heat and Harvu, like he at the RMR, like Harvu,
Yeah.
Harvu are existing, I guess, right now. But like, I think that's gonna really show as like, okay, this team are playing like a lot more games now on LAM, in studio. Is this gonna be vibes? Because like, I think, to be fair, I think them qualifying for this in itself, because they qualified for this, right? They came through the
Yes.
playoffs in
Yep.
in Eliza, and like that in its, I think, yeah, no, they beat Masonic and X Finest. So okay, you could maybe still, if you're really playing devil's advocate, you can make the argument that like, okay, look, that's X Finest who literally weren't pracking, playing with different squads. Masonic who like Ross changes and they lost to Saw. So like, you could still really make the argument of like, okay, is this team playing on vibes or not? But I think this is hopefully a team that will be progressing really far, and it's always nice to see a Northern Irish player play at a major.
Yeah.
I think what's
And I'm gonna let you guys try to figure out who that was.
sorry to jump in really quick. Just one thing to say is by having a good challenger stage as well for some of these teams invites up the possibility for them to then be invited into kind of these circuit tournaments and these
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
which is
100%.
not only really good exposure, but it's really good experience for them. And then, yeah, of course, the question of a honeymoon phase can be carried in for Gamer Legion, but it's the fact that we have got a display from Gamer Legion that have earned them the right to have these invites that will then answer your questions in the future, because this is the only real tournament that they've played as a roster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the same with what happened to Bad News Eagles, right? And
Yeah.
it's gonna be the same argument that you can make about every single team that's went through multiple roster changes or a complete rebuild, and that's done all right in their first, let's say, 1 or 2 tournaments. You can make the point about this being a honeymoon, and obviously there's gonna
It's
be
always gonna be a conversation.
yeah, yeah, and obviously there could be some issues appearing. After month 1, 2, or 3, people get really comfortable sometimes. Even from a psychological point of view, even if it's pretty much the same with, let's say, a relationship. Like you get into a new relationship, and then like the first month or 2 or 3, everything's hype and Jesus, right? Everything's perfect,
Mm.
and then you just chill a little bit, you relax, and you show your true colors. So obviously that could be a problem. I don't think that's going to be the case with Gamer Legion, because I personally have had the chance to speak to Monster, who's the analyst for the team, and he's given me some insight on the entire process behind him and Ash choosing the players, trying to build up a nice sustainable team, the vibes in the team being really good. And what I've had from him as a take, and this is something I really hope that I'm going to have the chance to discuss with Shuey himself sooner or later, is the fact that Shuey himself, even though he's quite young, knows where the line is between, being a jokey and funny and a cool dude that has the, the atmosphere up, and being a professionalist. And
That's really good.
I think this is something that's gonna help out Gamer Legion in the long run. I feel like this is a really good team with, well, it depends on what you understand by a lot of potential. I don't think they have the potential to be, let's say, a tournament winner. I think
Yeah.
they have the potential to be a really good like tier 1.5 team. Let's say ceiling team spirit. Let's say something like that. I think they can
Yeah.
be. I think they could be that good. Obviously, with how competitive the scene is nowadays, a lot of teams could be that good, so they will have to work hard for it. But things look all right for them. I think, by the way, I actually had an interesting thought. I think what happened to them is what happened to Forza the last 2 majors.
Agreed.
I think whenever you see a 2-0 matchup that's like Gamer Legion against Bad News Eagles, you gotta feel like, okay, the winner is gonna go 3-0, that's gonna be a shocker. The loser has a really big chance of actually not making it through, right?
Which happened, and they just, I remember you just kept on watching and being like, wow, they're really not gonna make it, are they? they're just not gonna make it.
No, absolutely. I mean, the loser of this 2-0 game, for me, most of the time it doesn't, and that's because it's 2 unexperienced teams. you're in that 2-0 position. It's really comfortable up there. It's really nice. But then you're like, okay, I'm just playing. Well, because in the end of the day, playing Bad News Eagles, or from the Bad News Eagles perspective, playing Gamer Legion doesn't seem like a game that you should be playing to qualify for a legend stage of a major. So
No, it
what you're
shouldn't be,
saying
yeah.
to yourself is like, I'm playing teams like that on a daily basis. I should be getting over those guys. And then if you don't get over those guys, you're like, okay, I still have 2 more games. But now I'm starting to draw in teams like Furia, like C9. You lose to them. You lose the first game against Furia. Like, okay, I lost to Furia. Fair enough. But I was up there in the 2-0, and you're starting to get into your head a little bit.
Oh yeah, I think especially for some of these inexperienced players, like you're definitely getting in your head, like you're playing in front of a crowd, and you're like, wow, I just about a bottle, maybe a 2-0, am I?
I'll tell you what, though, that game against Cloud9, that was very close, 16-13 both maps. So I feel like, yeah, although they lost that game, it's still very, very encouraging signs for
Yeah.
Game Legion.
Oh yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
it's like there isn't a big chance that C9 are gonna lose a game like that, an elimination BO3. But speaking about that, and big teams not being able to lose BO3s like that, I would really love us to move forward to the legend stage, because I was saying I was telling myself the same thing about FaZe, but hey, guess what happened? They did lose an 0-2 elimination game against Bad News Eagles. What you thinking about FaZe, boys?
Oh.
Yeah, I guess, Brandon, you know what? At this point, we just...
So depressed and upset in every single way, shape, and
I
form.
want to hear Freddie's opinion, because Freddie, I don't know if this is public, Freddie, I don't know how much he talks about it. Freddie is a massive FaZe fanboy.
I have been, like, I've got 4 jerseys dating back to 2016. I almost paid $1,000 recently for one of the recent FaZe jerseys, for one of the old FaZe, like, the old red
Yeah,
one.
this is just us
Almost
remembering Freddie.
Almost paid someone $1,000 for it.
Yeah, before the start of the show, he was like, "Do I actually have the money to afford buying that microphone?" And now he's like, "Yeah, I actually
That's
have
the
like
reason why.
5 FaZe Clan jerseys." Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, but like I've had them since I was like, I think I got my first one when I was like 15, so it was like, like I haven't, like I've been getting
First time I ever met Freddie in person, he was wearing a FaZe jersey.
So Freddie,
Yeah,
what you think
like,
about FaZe Clan?
I just how? Like how? Like it's just I just how? Like how can you, like it's just like how?
You tell us, Mr. Fan. What happened?
I don't know. I just remember, like, I remember just continuously watching and being like, are they gonna win? Like, hello? Like, and they just never did. And I think the Cloud9 game, I was like, fair enough. Look, like that was a close game. Could have gone either way. Like, yeah. And then Vitality, I just sit there and I was like, wow, we suck. And then I was like, okay, Bad News Eagles, like, surely we can't lose to Bad News Eagles. And then we just did. And I think Brokey had a really bad event. Like the other players, I think, especially against like Cloud9 and especially against BNE, the other guys stepped up when they needed to. So I think the rest of the roster, like they played on Hamoidu, but a lot of people are calling for minus Brokey, minus Rain. And I just don't think I agree with that. It's like you can't take it, it's like this is an awful result to have, like really bad to have. And I think the fact they didn't make a deeper run at Pro League maybe as well, like the fact they didn't make a deeper run at Pro League, I think even throws like a little bit more of like a just shadow over them. But they've got Blast coming up, like the one in Denmark, and that qualifies. Like if you win that, right, you go to Abu Dhabi. So
Yeah.
I feel like I genuinely do think if they don't come to the finals of Copenhagen, going into the next year, it might be an idea to start looking at potentially a newer team, just because. Oh, but then it's like, I don't know, like I like I like this team, and like they've done well, and like they're a good team, and because people are saying they should have roster changes, that's made me be like, oh my god, they should have roster changes,
No.
even though it's like, but they're doing. Oh wait, no, sorry, they've already qualified for Abu Dhabi, because they I didn't even realize that from like something else, but it's like it's a good team, and like they've done really well this year. I feel like, so what if they have a bad tournament? Like, yeah, it's really bad as the major, but it's like they're gonna bounce back. Please. I really hope they bounce back.
I was just about to say that was
idea.
just Freddie. Like, what's in the head of every single FaZe Clan fan is like, yeah, we need to go for a couple roster changes. Maybe not, but maybe yes, but maybe not. No, I don't think so. I like the lineup. No, I don't. What happened?
Okay, Brokey's so good. I don't know why people hate on Brokey. Like, yeah, I will agree, he had an awful major, and I don't think he just didn't play well, like, or to stats he did, but like, he played well. He's like, his stats are so good every single other tournament.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think they need to be I just don't feel like a roster change is even like close to being needed.
No, look, there's a lot of discussion point for FaZe. I feel like a lot of people are saying, "Oh, is this the classic Carrigan thing we're seeing, where he brings a team to a certain height and then he can't just keep it on a level?" And to that, I say, take a look at 2022. Take a look at what FaZe has achieved. Katowice, Pro League, Major,
Mm.
Cologne, like that. I think they're the first team. I correct me if I'm
Ever do that?
wrong.
Yeah, they are. They are.
They are
They
the
are.
first team to ever do that.
The
And
major would have like put the cherry like
yeah,
so firmly on the top.
agreed. And then you do that, and then you've got Brokey. Brokey, yeah, he did not have a good major. But to echo your sentiment, Freddie, you go on Brokey's HLTV page.
It's
You
so
take a
it's
look.
just
You take a
green.
look at Brokey's events. It's just all in the green. And
Literally every single event.
I saw so many bad takes on Twitter that it was like, get rid of Brokey, washed Orpa. And I was like, oh, come on, man. The only reason you're saying that is because you've got high expectations of Brokey because you know what he's capable of, because he's been performing that consistently throughout the entirety of the year. Same with this entire FaZe clan. Yes, they've had a very rough mark, but also what you got to take into consideration is they are best of ones. We can have a talk about the major format. I think best of ones are fine because if you're coming in as the best team in the world, it doesn't matter if it's a best of one or a best of three, you should be winning. So that should always be your mentality. But where Cloud9 scraped it through, where Vitality scraped it through as well, Vitality, you could argue that FaZe Cloud9 should never have been an opening stage matchup for the Legend stage.
Yeah.
Same could be said for the Navi Vitality game.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you got a knock on thing, but regardless, you've got a Cloud9 that have played 5 maps, so not even 5 maps, 5 matches in Challenger stage coming in warm against FaZe, who are already looking a little bit rocky towards the end of the year. But you take a look at what they've achieved throughout the rest of the year. That you shouldn't. These roster change is things. It's just I don't believe it, and the fact that
Yeah, I agree
some
actually.
people I've heard that some people have also said, "Oh, FaZe just don't believe in the project anymore." FaZe are one event off a Grand Slam. They believe in the project. Like let's just like cut all that
Yeah,
narrative as well.
I will cut the narrative and say like talking to their literal managers of the esports organization, like the esports team, they fucking love the players. Like
Yeah,
I've never heard someone just like talk so highly about someone before. Like they adore the amount of money FaZe would have made them this year, like that team, like the amount of prize money they would have made, and the amount of like everything. Like, there's no way there's any chance that the management don't care about them anymore. Like, that is like I've literally
No.
Twist even an interview with me
Yeah.
said that like because it's like naturally like you start winning, the management starts liking you. You win one tournament, the management like you. You win 4 tournaments in a row, the biggest tournaments in the world. The management's literally gonna adore you.
Yeah, yeah, especially in esports. Esports
Yeah.
is it's nearly impossible for an organization to actually profit on a team like that. But I completely agree. I feel like for FaZe, like I actually might have missed something because I actually didn't catch a lot of those roster change takes on Twitter, and I'm glad I didn't
Oh, it's
because
just incels.
because that's really funny to say. Like,
I've come full circle
you
now.
can
In a
make a
minute of
point
10
about
minutes.
that, I guess, about a Vitality, let's say, but a FaZe clan, come on. I mean, FaZe, they just flopped it. They flopped it absolutely massively. They had the biggest off
yep.
tournament. It's a massive disappointment, but I'm not gonna be surprised if FaZe are able to win the Blast tournament in Copenhagen in a couple of days. I'm not gonna be surprised whatsoever. What I think happened there, I feel like obviously there's no excuses for losing a BO3 against the Bad News Eagles, even though that's a part of the success story for BNE, because I feel like they're gonna be even happier with their performance here at this major compared to the previous one. Not only once again you make your way into the legend stage, but you eliminate the champion. You actually were the team to eliminate the reigning champion, so that's a big achievement. But I feel like you can't really blame anyone, even though it's
No.
it's horrendous the fact that they have to play C9 and Vitality in their first 2 games, right? That shouldn't be happening. But even with that, you're still playing a build tree against Bad News Eagles that you should be winning. With that being said, though, you're allowed to have off days. I mean, you're allowed to have, it's not off days, it's off tournaments, but I feel like even from the interviews that we've seen from, Kerrigan and everybody on the team, Kerrigan just said, you know what, this is, you can blame me. Apparently, our preparation wasn't as good. We haven't been as motivated as we thought we were for this tournament, apparently, and all of that he said, which pretty much tells us the story of, FaZe Clan. Do you remember what Cadian said after the final against Outsiders, by the way? That no one was on the same page, things just didn't click in, and things didn't work out. FaZe Clan just had that throughout the entire tournament here. This is what I feel like.
They also played like 6 maps.
Yeah,
5 maps,
exactly. And
like,
that's the thing. Like, you're playing against teams that have already warmed up, as Brandon said. All of them have made their way through the challenger stage. That's gonna make a difference. And then you flop it. Does that make it an excuse? No. But when you've had one of the most successful years in competitive CSGO history, you can't just change players after one horrendously wrong tournament, because it's one tournament. Like, if they do the same at Paris, okay, go for changes. But there's a long time until that.
They've still got 2 international events literally left within the next month. So it depends. I think that... I will say, maybe if they shit the bed in both of them, that might not be great. That might be like, ooh, what do we do here now?
Yeah,
So, because that would be 3
I
events in a
feel
row, right?
it would be, but at the same time, you give them the chance to win the Grand Slam, and I think it's so disrespectful to talk about roster changes in FaZe.
It's one of the teams in which you just can't bring up a better player.
No, you can't.
Like who do you replace Brokey with?
You don't. Also as well, it's a fun thing you bring up about off tournament. It was literally 2 days for FaZe. It was
5 maps.
2 days.
It was like Brokey had, I would only say 2 bad maps if you look at the stats.
The only thing you bring into question throughout that, well, you bring into the only game plan thing that I would argue you bring into question on that FaZe game is that they let Vertigo go through over Ancient. I feel like they should have banned Vertigo and played BNE on Ancient. That's just my take on it. I feel like FaZe are a bit of a you've got the best cave player in the world in Rain.
I guess that was the worst possible moment to try and experiment with the map pool.
Yeah.
I mean, but like, surely that wouldn't, do you think that would be them like having like a big brain, like, I've planned to do this, I'm gonna do this?
Or is it we're speaking about the tier 1 organization, Freddie. Of course they planned it. I mean, but it just didn't go right.
They wanted to play with a 7 map pool in the major. So that's what Kerrigan said. He said, look, we wanted to play 7 maps coming in before the major, so we practiced and we let it go through, and it's his mistake. It's what he said immediately on like the exit interview with ESL. So I agree with him. That was a mistake, because you're leaving Vertigo in against Bad News Eagles. But yeah, apart from that, look, I feel like we've kind of rinsed the whole FaZe narrative a lot. I feel like, look, it's an off tournament, it happens. We'll have to see how they perform going forward. But
I agree.
Roster changes is such a stretch for this lineup.
Yeah, for a lot of different teams. Well, a lot of the other teams you can speak about. Fred, it's all right.
It's gonna cry. It's fine.
Yeah, it's good. We can just have that talk in between me and you. You know what? That's actually happened every single time that I've had Freddie for anything. It like the same thing happened when I had him over with Scriv the first time around. He just stands up, he just goes wherever and just bounces back 5 minutes later, and he's like, yeah, guys.
No, like, I've got to go somewhere in like an hour, so and I'm getting a lift, so at least, like, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You know what? Take your time, do your laundry. It's all good. But actually, speaking of roster changes and stuff like that, before we get into the positive part of things, we had Outsiders, but we still have a lot more teams that actually did a really good job, and maybe you want to highlight, and I'd want to highlight some of them for sure. But which ones would you say were the biggest disappointments of this tournament? We already had FaZe Clan. We spoke about them. This stage, I'd say. Let's speak about this stage. Which are the teams that really did disappoint you, and the teams that you would actually expect to see some changes in? Because I've seen some interesting takes on Vitality, to be fair.
The Vitality one, I've got an interesting take.
Yeah, go on, we'll start.
I think, very interesting take. Minus Apex, I don't know who plus, but make Magic's IGL. I don't know what the
Why?
thought. So the mentality I have there is I think Apex as an IGL maybe has only a certain limit to him. And in Pro League, like, I don't know. I was watching their games and I was like, I kind of watched, I was like, how have they won this? Like, how do they win Pro League? It just didn't seem like it felt so, I don't know, lackluster. And Magic's IGL before in Astralis as Zonic as the coach. And I think that is a big impact as well to have Zonic still as the coach. And I feel like they could upgrade a lot more firepower with a minus Apex plus someone else. The only issue I would then have is ZywOo, like he's notoriously quite a timid guy, isn't he? So is having Apex there, like like French, like the buddy thing, like does that actually have more of an impact than just on the server? But I feel like they could upgrade. They could do with a lot more like firepower. I feel like potentially because Spigs. Oh, actually, also because the Spinks like when Spigs has come in, he's gone down 0.10 rating, and other players have gone up. So the roles have been changed, and I think Spigs is right now playing slightly out of position, which I find like extortionate. So they need
Well,
to have a change of some sort, 100%. If you've got Spinks playing out of position.
I don't think they need a roster change because I think it's so recent since the Spinks one. I feel like what you've got to consider with Vitality is you got to look at it. There's a lot to unpack with Vitality because you have to look at when this whole amalgamation of this European super team, quote unquote, came together. You've got the conflicting styles of IGLing between the Astralis mantra and the Apex mantra, and you've got they tried it to do the Vitality way, then they tried to transition into the call in the Astralis way, and now they've kind of got this middle ground. And what's interesting for me with Vitality is we could talk about everything you've spoken about, but for me, especially during this stages, not just in Challenger, but also in Legend, is whenever you cut to the player cams, and I think it's so just ironic because we had this shoulder piece content with Freya, Apex, and Dupree, where it was like they were meditating, they were trying to be zen and stay calm. Whenever you look at the player cams on Vitality, when they were going through a little bit of a rough moment, they lost a few rounds in a row. It was Apex, Dupree, Magisk, all molded, all being really
Yeah,
upset,
yeah,
getting very frustrated. That environment to play in is very difficult to just kind of play in
yeah.
general.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
I mean, I'm sure like we're not at the top tiers of Counter Strike, but I'm sure we've all kind of been in environments,
Have you?
not just in pugs, but just in ESCA teams where you kind
Well,
of get
what do you
into a
mean you haven't
toxic
been in the top tiers?
environment.
You've both played Epic, and if you ask every single UK fan, Epic
I've not
LAN is
played
the
Epic.
oh, you haven't? Okay,
I've,
Freddie's played
I'm
Epic.
I'm a top 8 epic lanner. I'll have you know.
Yeah, if
Like,
you
come
ask
on, put
Freddie,
some
he's
respect
actually
on the name.
he actually low key believes he's good at CS:GO. That's the funny part
Yeah.
about it. He believes it.
No, I've come to terms that I'm bad at the game. But if
But
I'm bad at the game, Ted, then you're awful.
Okay, we're having a different conversation right
we're
now,
not
by the way.
gonna. I'm not gonna discuss this.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm the worst elo wise, but I know I'm bad, so it's fine. Yeah, they're basically they've got anger issues in that team
Yeah.
that they need to kind of try and resolve because it can just I find it very difficult to believe in a Vitality comeback at the moment. Also, it's a good point you mentioned about Spinks. I feel like Spinks, yeah, he's not playing the roles that he did in Ents. He's not that star performer. I mean, how can you be when you've got ZywOo? So you're always gonna have
True. Yeah. Yeah.
you're always gonna have to play a different style of play. For me, what's interesting, I feel like Spinks has been found out comparatively from Pro League to the Major because in Pro League he was going for a lot of these info like hero moment plays, like he'd push a smoke on a weird timing, he'd go for information to get Vitality the pieces to rotate back over, and it was working. You watch a lot of these demos back, you look at where Vitality lost these games. Teams before they executed into a place, they were holding these smokes just on the extremities just for a couple more seconds, and Spinks would walk in and get punished. So that's something that whether they will review on demo and consider. I feel like, and also that then relates back to the environment of, oh, my team's a bit upset. I feel like I have to try and make this play to bring our team back into it because it can't just all be off the back of ZywOo. Dupree had a good event. There were some moments where his performance has been called into question. I think he had a good event mostly overall. Um, but yeah, this Vitality team is interesting. I feel like they do need a little bit of time. I heard it. Eternal J brought up a point. He said he doesn't know how real it is and how factual it is, but I'm gonna just bring it over to this one as well. He said that some of the Vitality players even took a pay cut to bring Spinks on the roster.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me again because
That's
it's like
very
they
interesting.
really want this guy to be on the team. They do believe in the project. They buy into it. Something's got to give. I think it's going to be a structural change rather than a personnel
Yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
agree. I mean, yeah.
it's a good point you made because initially, like, why they bring up a player like Spinks, the difference is because Misuta wasn't going down in those rounds, but that was because he was hyper defensive and they needed somebody to open up space and give information,
Yep.
right? That's why they bring up Spinks because he is the guy that goes for those plays. Now it's really awkward because you don't really give him the freedom and the control that he had on ends, but that's completely normal. As you said, it's just the structure of the team. It's not, just simply comparing Zaiwu to Hades and being like, okay,
Exactly.
Zaiwu is a hyperstar, he's a lot better. It's just the way that the teams use their ops and their rifles. Ents has
So
always been
different.
Ents with Hades especially was never a team that actually relied on Hades to carry through the games, right? He was
Yep.
just the supporting oper, whereas with Vitality it's the other way around. And even if you want to get your piece of the cake with Zaiwu being the big star, you're not gonna get your piece of the cake with the rifles either, because you already have Magisk and Dupree. And when you have such strong personalities and you're the new guy on the block, you can't just join in and be like, you know what, I'm taking this position from you. I'm taking short off of Dupree or taking pit off of Magisk and be like, you know what? I want to play those positions. You go
Yeah,
fuck off. You
exactly.
can't do that. You play what's free. And that's why I actually don't agree with people criticizing Spinks individually. I think you should try and really emphasize the fact that this man is just playing a different game right now. It's
Yep.
not the same game that he was set up, and he's still doing a hell of a good job. He's still doing better than Misuta did individually, and he's playing the same roles, and he's still able to, use his aggressive style and find information, be impactful sometimes. But the team doesn't need him to be a star. The team doesn't need him to have a 1.15 rating, and I really, by the way, I really dislike that when someone just opens up an HOTV profile and they're like, oh, look at that rating. Okay, this guy's trash or this guy's goated. The rating sometimes does really reflect what you're doing in the server, but a lot of the times it doesn't tell you the whole story. And all those stats are good
Yeah.
to look into, but I feel like Spinks isn't really to blame
Yep. Agreed.
for
No, yeah.
Vitality. I feel like Zaiwu turned up in a way sometimes. Might have had higher expectations of him, but it was kind of like a Demi-ish situation. I think just the entire team was off, really. It's not up to
Agree.
individual criticizing, and I've actually seen a lot of interesting takes on people thinking, and I'm actually trying to convince myself to agree with that. The fact that Vitality and the French scene as a whole needs Apex and Zaiwu on a French speaking team, because that takes out a lot. And even though I love Dupree and Magisk and Sonic, I think they're phenomenal, and I think that recently they've actually started looking a little bit better. And the anger that you spoke about, actually, Brandon, I think it's been, you can still see it, but it's been highly reduced compared to a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually had really high. That's why Vitality is the biggest disappointment for me on this tournament. I actually had such big expectations. I truly believe that was a team that was supposed to have what it takes to win the major in the end. But unfortunately, it doesn't work out. And yeah, I guess it's, for me, it's a disappointment. But it's kind of like the FaZe scenario where I just need to wait and see what happens because I still believe in that lineup. But bringing you guys through, because we gotta rush it through just a little bit. Quick thoughts on Liquid and NIP, if you want to say something about those before we get into the playoffs.
NIP, I think classic. Just give Res more time. Like they showed what they can do. I just think there's like this team just needs time, and I think it'll be a good team. It just simply needs time. Like you got Hampus who's starting to step up a little bit more in the rifling role, which he needed to. Same with Esatag as transitioning nicely out of being in that AWP. Brolan doing Brolan things, and Alexi B just a great IGL. And I think they just need more time. That's my take on them.
I think NIP have tried to change too much too quickly.
Yes,
Um,
I completely agree.
and it's really reflected by, you take a look at their performances, and you take a look at the fact that they would go 0-3 in this stage, and you take a look at the players and how they performed, and Alexi B is the second best performing player on that team, and Broland's rock bottom. It's a little bit unfortunate, but I feel like you bring Alexi B into this team because you want a structural IGL change. Completely agree with it. I think it's fine. You let Hampus off the leash a little bit. He can perform really well in a rifle role. That's fine. For me, you don't swap immediately S-Tac and Rez. You keep
It
Rez
didn't.
doing what
Yeah.
you keep Rez doing what he does best on the AK. If he wants to AWP down the line, that's fine, right? But for now, all you do is you let Alexi B change the structure of the team, change how they want to play, and then suddenly you can then transition over into okay, Rez wants to give the AWP a go. Okay, well now we've got our structure found out. Now we have a foundation to build off of. Let's just see how that goes for a little bit. I feel like they changed it way too quick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually, you made a good point about the structure. I'm kind of quite the opposite. I'm on the old school, Hampus being the IGL camp still. I feel like picking up Alexi B was just a rush decision. I don't think it was something that they had planned. It was kind of more like, oh, he's a free agent. We'd actually love to work with a structured IGL. Let's pick him up and see what happens. And I feel like it was just a little bit too rushed. So I'd say that NAP is a team that I don't really want to see play with the same roster or the same structure anymore, because I simply don't see that one working out. I might be proven wrong. I'm just not the biggest fan of it. I don't think that, especially like for a person like Brolan, he was like, oh yeah, I'm leaving Fnatic to play in a Swedish speaking environment, and then 3 months
So
later, hey man, you're speaking English again. That's great. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I was 50-50 for NIP before the start of the tournament, but then even though I like Rez, I really like him more as a rifle, and
Agreed.
I still feel like you're killing his potential as a rifle when giving him the AWP, and you're kind of like, that's kind of like that thing that you do on when you play a Faceit game or a puck with friends, and you're like, oh, the best guy in the lobby is gonna play the AWP because he's the best. Well, he's actually a rifler. He's gonna have more impact with the rifle. I feel like if you really don't want S-Tac on the AWP, then bring up someone young. You can give Fuzi a chance once again, or somebody like that. I mean, there's a lot of youngsters. And speaking of which, obviously we're gonna get into MOUZ Sports just now, but look at what they did. I mean, they were just bringing up young guys. Do that. I mean, a lot of teams have been recycling those old school, really good players that have proven themselves and whatnot, which completely respectful, does make sense. But the teams that actually did make it through in the playoffs, and the teams that consistently just do well and seem to, be going on an up trajectory, even though some are going a little bit quicker than others, they are the teams that are giving chances to the younger guys, and embracing the Academy League project and the Academy teams. And with that being said, fellas, we're gonna move into the playoffs, and I really wanna hear what you think about.
We talk about Liquid.
Oh well, I don't really want to be fair.
Okay, fine.
You know why? You know what?
As
Because
a UK
I'm a
player in
massive
playoffs, no NA.
I'm a massive Ikendir fan. That's why. I just don't want to speak about that. I'm like,
That's fine.
I think there's one interesting point I saw about Yakinda was that he came in and kind of like changed that. I think a lot of Liquid changed, and it relied on Yakinda doing well, and the fact that he didn't, plus that Elige didn't as well,
Yep.
is like it's a problem that if it happens again.
He's
But I
just
think
a win
the
condition
Liquid,
for them at this point.
yeah, I think he can't. I think Elige also can't shoot the better the way he did. So I think Elige needs to do better, and Yakinda needs to be more consistent. But I think it's not a problem yet.
You can't say Yakinda needs to be more consistent.
As in, like after that major,
No,
like as in, like the major,
it's
he
their
wasn't.
problem. It's
I
their
think it
problem that
was
they
the
rely on him
major.
that much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I think
also like Elige had a rough one. Nitro had a stinky major. Nitro had an awful major.
No
Yeah.
one speaks about Nitro. I feel like he's got the, if this was a Survivor or something like that, he's just got the mascot, the immunity, and no one's
Yeah.
speaking about him. He's just there. He's a part of Liquid.
And like I don't really know why he is there. Like
Well, you're not the
It's because
only
have
person.
well,
to
the
ask those
reason why is there is because they have no IGLs. He leaves the game for a year and a half, and he still comes back as the best NA IGL.
Yeah, but they're
Like,
not even
fundamentally.
they're not IGLing with an NA style though, because when Yakinda got brought in, it was said multiple times in an interview that he's brought over a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that's been implemented into their game. Yeah, you've got one guy that calls that great. You could get anyone. you get
Well, no,
someone.
but that's the thing is you can't get anyone. Like he can bring a lot of stuff over and he has, but like the problem you just go back to the same thing of like NA just don't have anyone. And Ryan was on the Hazel TV podcast just getting completely belittled time and time again because you just look at NA and you're like, there's all this money and there's all these people. How is everyone shit? Like you look at the teams that have made it through and it's like Liquid like how do these teams just never seem to progress? And it's like, how do these teams never like? You have fucking Nitro leave for 2 years and he comes back, he's on the best team again. And like, it's because you just don't have anyone else. And it's like, if you could have anyone else, if you could have any other IGL, then why don't they have any other IGL? It's because they just physically can't because there's no one good enough.
I think, yeah, maybe they just want to stick to a North America IGL rather than importing. But maybe they might have to down the line. I feel like what's an
Probably will
interesting
have to.
point, just to close on, is with that Liquid Spirit game,
Mm.
is you take a look at the stats for that, and on the game that what was it, on Mirage where Liquid won? What was interesting to me is the fact that Chopper had an absolute howler. I think he had 9 kills on that Mirage
Yeah.
game that Liquid won. He comes out swinging on Ancient and he drops like 20 kills. Like incredible resurgence, incredible mentality just to reset. And Nitro didn't have that. Nitro had back-to-back poor maps, and then when it was needed, when Liquid needed to kind of like bring it over, he just unfortunately didn't quite have it in him, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's just the way it is sometimes.
It is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, it is what it is. And speaking of Chopper, by the way, and the genius of an IGO that he is, moving forward into the playoffs, guys. Was there something that really did shock you? And just give me your take overall on the playoffs and what happened there, because we had a couple interesting teams, maybe a couple teams that not a lot of people expected to make it into the playoffs, and then a couple teams that were always gonna make it in. I'd say that maybe C9, Heroic, Navi, and Furia weren't really a surprise that did make it through. Well, some people were actually surprised by C9, but I really don't buy that. But was there something that actually caught you off guard in what way?
I was surprised by the Fury Frio for starters. I wasn't expecting. To be honest, Cloud9 and Fury. I was. I guess the Furia one. Like, I feel like a lot of people would have put them as pick'ems as like a vibe team that could have made it. But like, still, the 3-0 is surprising. Fnatic, Mezzy literally was just like, I don't know how we've made it here, and I think that's fair. It's like they're a team that are only getting better and better, and they don't even feel like they're ready themselves. And like they've already gone 3-1. They've already made it to the playoffs. Like that's so good for them. Spirit, you have a player like Wonderful who is he's a player like Wonderful who's I guess like he's the youngest player in the legend stage, right? And then also the youngest in terms of just like so little experience. And then he's playing so well, he's doing really good on that AWP. And then you got MOUZ, where I was very, very critical of the plus exertion minus BMIS pick. I was like, firstly, you're
Were
fucking
you?
BMIS over. I was like, this, like, why? I was looking at this squad and I was like, they've just made top 4 at Cologne, like, we're looking good. And then you change in with an academy player that doesn't have as much experience. And I was like, damn, I don't agree with that whatsoever. Then he's proved me wrong. And I put my hands up in the air and said, I think I was publicly very much like, why is exertion in this roster? Man, fair play. He's done well. Like, they're just good. Like they're so good. And it shows that the academy squad is really really good. Cycron said when I interviewed him, he was talking about how how they prepare their academy team is exactly how they prepare their main team in every single way, shape, and form, and it's shown. And so many teams are following in that same manner, and it's literally the meta right now.
Yeah, I feel like I saw a stat and it was 30% of all players in the champion stage of the major were from academy projects,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And I feel like MOUZ is the perfect blueprint of this is how successful young academy players can be. And what's really interesting is you've got Dexter that kind of gives them the freedom to do so. You can even see it on their T sides, and that's fundamentally, I believe, a core reason why they do so well
Yeah.
on their T side, because they're being allowed freedom and they're being allowed to play like expressively and how they want to play it. It's a little bit of a looser style to call in, but it's working out really effectively. What's weird for this MOUZ side is their T sides are often a lot more stronger than their defense, which is crazy to have in
That's
the
also a new meta. That's a
the
thing.
team
That
meta.
should be a thing.
I think that's about the team, right? It's about the approach.
Yes.
Like you have, I don't think well, I don't think you're gonna see a team like, let's say, C9 being a lot better on their T side than they're on the CT side, simply because their defense is so picture perfect, right?
Agreed.
But then you have like teams like MOUZ and Furia and maybe Heroic from time to time, but not that much. Those guys are, obviously every single team is going to have their good moments on the T side. Outsiders and Navi are going to have their good moments, but that's simply because, of some good calls and preparations and stuff like that. But in general, teams that feel a lot more comfortable on their T sides, teams like MOUZ and Furia, they just love dictating the pace. And I feel like one thing that Dexter has done a really good job of, and I feel like this is where Cyclone comes in clutch and him knowing the players really well. He's just like, I want those young guys to be comfortable. Because I know that the stage is not going to be helping out. I know that the expectations are not going to be helping out. I know that nothing will help them out to, feel more at home than me letting them play the game as they are used to playing it. And another thing to kind of emphasize on is the fact that I think it's been almost a year and a half or maybe even 2 years since those guys joined MOUZ. Not speaking about the main team, the organization, even in the academy. They've been playing in the same structure as the main team, but just in the academy team. So when you bring Exertion in, replacing BMAS, he's playing the same game that he played on the NXT side. He's just playing against better players. And for him, obviously, you're going to need some time. But individually, we all know that he already was up there, right? Individually, you have the level. And a lot of those young guys have the level. The problem is elsewhere. The problem is mental. The problem is holding your own, being able to play the structure and kind of be like, okay, I'm humbled now. I'm not the big star anymore. But they've been able to accept that. And I feel like this MOUZ NXT team is just a really good example of how important it is to have, not only the skill, but people that know how to polish that skill and, make professionals out of those good players. Because no one couldn't, people can't argue about JDC, Exertion, or Torzi being good players. People could try and make a point that mentally they're not going to be able to hold their own. But now you can't even make that point because they're like, oh, you know what, fuckers? We've been working with sports psychologists for the last 2 years. We have the mentality of professional sportsmen, and we showed that on the stage, and I think it was great.
Yeah, the biggest question mark for this MOUZ team for me going into the event was Torji, just because I got no doubt about his comprehensive mechanical ability. It was just whether he could perform, because quite often in the more of the bigger games, he goes a little bit absent against the top teams. But no, he had an incredible performance, and I feel like I wanted to kind of just make that point publicly because I've been like just always been a bit on the fence about the Torji that like when he comes into these bigger stages, but they all stepped up, and I'm just very impressed with how they performed. And I didn't pick them at all through any stage at all in the major, and they proved
They
me
were
wrong.
my trio, by the way. They were my trio for the second stage, and I was like, fuck.
Incredibly impressed with how they performed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've done well. They've done really well, and like they're just looking like they're better and better. And I think that's it's a really bright future of the thing. But like, look at some of the other teams now as well. Fnatic, I love UK. I love Mezzi. Love Mezzi and Keita.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
And
You know what?
I made
I think I was watching Jay's podcast, and I think it was Ryan that was like, he's like, yeah, you know what? Spirit, I'd say bang average, mid for me, but Fnatic were phenomenal. Both teams make it into the same stage, but you know what? The UK factor is the UK factor.
Yeah, no. Like the Spirit thing, Ryan said that it was like a bang average performance. That is one of the worst takes I've heard in a big long time. Like, like Spirit, like
fun.
they need to do like I think after the last major they dropped off a little bit, and we need to see more from their conference major. But like getting to this stage for them is huge, and like like they're like, yeah, like that's huge for them. They're doing incredible. It's such a good result. Fnatic even more. Like I put a tweet out about like how it's really good that we have like we have these roles, like we have these figures like Mezzi, who's a very modest person in that manner as well. And like we don't have that in a lot of the others with like we don't have firstly just any other player above like ECL. who's like a big figure. And Mezzi is a player who is so vocal in a very positive aspect, and he's very modest in a lot of different ways. And he's a great person for someone who's outside of the UK niche to look up to and be like, this is who I want to have. Because the only other person is Smooya, who publicly goes out and talks about how much he hates UKCS, comes to LAN, flames people on stage, and is all right, just a bit of a dick to people. So it's like you've got that, you've got no, because like that's exactly what he does. Like he goes to Epic LAN, gets on stage, calls everyone bad, and then goes home, goes on stream, talks about how bad UKCS is. And he has such a large following, and all those UK players who are like, like Gold Nova 2 and stuff, watch that and they're like, UKCS is so bad. Where in reality, there's like a big infrastructure, and Mezzi is the prime spearhead of all of that. And it's so just amazing to see that we've got someone like that who's doing so well behind closed doors, helps out like MMS, who's now on the new SOS roster, well, the Viperia roster. He has so much help from Mezzi, and it's showing in his gameplay, and like multiple other people. He does so much behind closed doors and publicly, and it really shows. And I'm so glad we have someone like that in the scene, to be honest.
Brandon, you have I just at the moment I just realized that I have 2 UK people on me, and we speaking about Fnatic. So if you have something you might want to add on to that, because to be fair, I'm not I like most of the players individually in that Fnatic lineup. I'm still not sold on the idea. I think it's a massive surprise that they actually made it into the playoffs, even though they've been getting some good
100%.
results.
Yeah, there's no way they should have made playoffs. No way.
Yeah, I'm still not sold on that Fnatic lineup, but if there's something you want to add about that.
I would just say that like the expectation for Fnatic coming into the major was to make legends. That's
Okay.
all they wanted to achieve. That's what Mezzi said after they made legends. They said, "We've made our goal. We'll just see what happens." And when that happens, it means the team plays without pressure. And what you look at is you look at how Roy played incredibly well without pressure, how well Fasher played and rise to the occasion without pressure.
Yeah.
It's just for me, Fnatic, and then furthermore as well, just kind of add into this point, is Mezzi said in a recent interview, I think with HLTV confirmed that he feels like that they're only about half of what their potential is. And I can completely agree with and see what he's saying there. Because if you get all these 5 players on the same page playing and they don't feel like they have pressure at all, that's a very dangerous Fnatic. And that's we're going to see a more consistent Fnatic going forward. Incredibly impressed with the way that Mezzi just transitions seamlessly into all of these different roles within Counter-Strike and is able to pick them up and, apply his craft to them. And yeah, I mean, I think the roster's really interesting. I think it's exciting as well. I don't think there's a single bad piece on that Fnatic roster. I think they've got 5 very good players. And yeah, I'm excited for their future and happy that they got to the quarterfinals. Thought it was the correct place for them to kind of bow out. Outsiders looked like a different class. Obviously, went on to win the major. But even in the series that they played, I think in the challenger stage, they just looked a cut above as well. So Fnatic, very good, promising signs. Excited to see how they'll develop in 2023.
Yeah, unfortunately, by the way, Brandon, it's going to be just me and you until the remaining of that conversation.
All
Because,
right.
yeah, unfortunately, Freddie has to go, and all of you guys in chat can hate on him. You know what? Freddie actually had 2 people. Both Pavlos and Nuke did praise Freddie for being a big brain of the game. They said that all of us are. He had 2 people praise him for being a big brain at CSGO, and he's going to leave early. So
I will say on my last note, csgo is the best player in the world. He is sick. I do apologize. I thought I was leaving at 6, and that's a mishap on my fault. I gotta go take some photos of some horses. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Good.
okay. That was
Enjoy.
just, I feel like he just opened up Google and he's like, random excuse generator.
No,
Okay, I gotta go and get some photos with horses.
Okay, so I can understand where the line of like that sounds a bit weird, but yeah, no, like I genuinely go take pictures of horses. But yeah, no, csgo, best player in the world, and on that note, I am gonna leave you guys there. Thank you very much for having me. Should I just leave VMix?
Yeah, you can just leave everything. Okay.
Thank you, Ted, and sorry for leaving early.
Thank you, Freddie.
Lots.
Thank you.
I love you lots. Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so it's just me and you left now. Unfortunately,
hello.
Yeah, unfortunately for everybody else, they're not going to be able to listen to Freddie's lovely takes from now on. But we have a couple more teams that I actually wanted to speak about. You know, it's going to be like a
Yeah.
well 4-eye interview for now. But what you think about Team Spirit and what happened there? Because I feel like a lot of people actually didn't praise the team enough for what they did once again,
Yeah.
and it's a really thin margin because I've seen a lot of takes on, you know, implying that Spirit is a tier 1 team now, which I don't agree with, and a lot of people implying that Spirit just didn't do anything unique, which again I don't really agree with.
I feel like spirit of this team that always shows up to the majors. They put a lot of prep work into it. Chopper has done incredibly well on a consistent basis across multiple years now with different rosters, and I feel like his credentials they can't really be slated.
Mm,
Spirit in the conversation for a tier 1 team. I think it's a little bit difficult, and I feel like the only reason why is because you just got to look at consistency. However, winning Flow Fire, now appearing at the quarterfinal of a major, pushing Heroic, I feel like that they can definitely be in the conversation for the future. I just feel like they have to show it across more events within the calendar year.
yeah,
What I will say though is they lost Dexter, which was a massive blow to them. This wonderful guy they picked up, he's legit. He had an incredibly good run. The pressure didn't seem to phase him. Incredibly young as well, and he can be molded now into the framework of Spirit that Chopper's been building over these last couple of years. And again, Spirit, got to remind you that it's this team that has come in with the Academy project as well. You've got Siren and you've got Patsy that were Spirit Academy players that have now come in, integrated themselves into the roster. And Siren is a player that does not really get much recognition.
yeah,
And he has been so good, so good, especially during this major one, but also during Flowfire, he performed pretty good as well. So I think this team's legit. I think they're very good. I agree with you. I don't think they're tier 1 just yet, but they can be in the conversation. I'd argue that they'd be the gatekeeper team.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
if you can win against Spirit, okay, you can we kind of can value you and say, okay, how have you got to this point? What are you bringing to the table going forward? But I'm a big fan of Spirit. I like what Chopper's done for this side just in general. And yeah, I've got nothing but praise for Spirit. I really do like them.
Yeah, let's just emphasize on the fact that I think you made a couple of valid points there. Just emphasize on the fact that Chopper throughout his career, it it's been so similar to Jame, by the way, in a way,
Yeah,
because
agree.
he builds up a team, then he gets one of his best players gets stolen away, or his best player, and then he finds somebody else to replace him with, and he's equally as good, is if not better, right? Because initially, like the Spirit lineup that a lot of people got impressed with had Dexter and Magix being the newcomers, and then you had Chopper and you had SDY and you had Mir to support him. And it was a
Yeah.
really well working machine, right? Because you were like, okay, Mir is one of the best Russian players to ever touch the game, according to a lot of people. Really gifted, really talented, really consistent, experienced as well. SDY was kind of the missing piece of the puzzle in a team like that, you know, a really calm guy, some experience as well. But, you know, SDY on Navi is the least experienced guy. On Spirit was quite the other way around. He was up there with Chopper. And then you know, Chopper, well, not Chopper, but they decide to remove Mir. SDY goes out as well, and then you pick up two guys from the academy team. Patsy, a lot more well known because of, you know, he had some time standing in beforehand in the main roster, but again, you just bring him in full time. Siren, a guy that not a lot of people have actually did know before his time of joining the main team. And then again, you lose your big star in Dexter, and you have wonderful win. I feel like I really agree with the thing that you said about Siren. I was actually hoping that you would bring it up because I heard you say it when you were having a talk with Jay and Trav and Ryan earlier. I think people don't realize how much weight there is on the role that Siren's
Yeah.
playing on this team, and I don't think people realize that he's actually so vocal alongside Chopper. Like he's the second most vocal point in this team. When you have people like Magix, who's now experienced, you know, and you are a guy that a year and a half ago played Academy League CS. Like 1 year ago, you were playing Academy League CS. You're so vocal. You're helping out Chopper so much, and that's not something that you don't even need to see an interview to realize that. Just looking at the cams, just looking at how much Sirens speak, and and you know the impact that he's got on the positions that he's got. He's playing those positions where if you get a double or a triple kill, you're going to be praised like the hero. If you don't get a single kill, then people will start, trash talking you. And mentally, it's really hard to reset in those positions because you got to understand and accept the fact that when you open up HOTV, it's going to be mainly red when you're playing those roles. But he's been doing a great job. One interesting thing I actually wanted to bring up about Wonderful, I've actually seen him play on LAN before, personally. It was the first LAN that I casted in my career in English as well. It was a Bulgarian LAN, and I casted this one with Peter, with Kremer. And we had Veracity on as a caster, and then we had John P as well. And he was playing on a team called Majesty back in the day. This is the team that, by the way, he got, the allegations for match fixing.
Yes, yeah.
As well, which I thought was going to affect his performance at the major, but it didn't.
Yeah, same. No, I didn't care.
And didn't give a flying fuck about it. And at that LAN in Bulgaria, when he was playing with those Majesty guys, obviously I didn't manage to have a chat with him because he didn't really speak English at the time. Now it might be a little bit better, but he destroyed the crap out of some of the best Bulgarian players. Like, I mean, people like Bubble, like Ships, like all of those guys. He had some really decent highlights against them. And I was like, you know what? This guy, I think he was like 14 or 15 at the time. And there was like, we were at the tournament, we were having a laugh because apparently his parents had to sign a whole bunch of documents for him to be able to come over to the tournament. And then he absolutely farmed in some of the games. I think he made semifinals or something like that. And to be fair, there was a lot of shit teams. But because, COVID and all of that, and it was just Bulgarians, and we don't really have 10 decent Bulgarian teams. It's like 2 or 3, and then the rest were just fucking about. But he actually did have a good couple games against the big dog. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Spirit lineup does. I'm really a big fan. I'd say that for the first time in a long time, looking at MOUZ and Spirit, I do really feel like I'm a fan just watching CS and enjoying it.
Yeah, I feel like the casters brought up a funny thing as well on the Liquid Spirit, like a progression elimination game, and they said that the last time Liquid made playoffs, so Wonderful was 14 years old, because this guy's young, and you got to remember about this Spirit team as well, is they're all very young players. It's like Siren's 20, Wonderful's 17. I feel like Magic's is like 24, 23, something like that, and yeah, it's crazy. That team's got a lot of a very high ceiling, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess Spirit was a really pleasant surprise in terms of everything that happened.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
Not average.
Bang average. But yeah. You know what, Jack? Fuck you. Do you see what Jack's put in the chat? He's speaking about the Bulgarian tournament that I mentioned. He was like, he was like, I got offered the tournament and then I refused it because I wanted to keep my kidney. Oh, great stuff. Okay. But having Spirit out the way, I guess we had a talk about outsiders. We had a bit of a talk about maybe Heroic and Fury are the last 2 teams that we need to mention, and obviously Na'Vi as well, because we spoke about MOUZ. Oh no, we have Cloud9 as well. Okay, we have a couple of teams left. So any interesting takes that you'd wanna have on maybe a C9 right now and a Na'Vi? I'd actually put them in the same category in terms of how things went there.
So I feel like I guess you can kind of group them in the same thing, right? I think it was a mentality issue for both of these teams. C9 in particular, I remember I brought this up on the Taylor Joe's podcast. I'll bring it up again because I think it's a very valid point. I feel like Cloud9 struggle with this mentality issue. I don't think it's a conversation about whether they can. The narrative is always, can they do it on LAN compared to can they do it online? I feel like
then Shiro drops 1.5 rating and they can do it on LAN.
I feel like it's proven that they can do it on LAN, especially because they've made these performances on LAN, win Dallas, etc. I feel like that it's a real mentality thing, and the thing that sold it to me, and it was like in that game, I know it's like you got to like kind of be a little bit respectful, but at the same time, it was a pre-match interview that ESL did, and they had Hobbit and they had. I think it was Frozen, and Hobbit basically was like, "Oh, we're not the favorite coming into this game," And it's like, bro, like don't say that. Like, I know you got to be courteous to your opponent, but given everything that's going on at this legend stage, given the bracket and the position that you're in, you're the favorite to win this whole bloody major.
Yeah,
Like,
that was supposed to be either C9 or Navi's tournament.
yeah, like have a little bit of belief in yourself, and I
Mm.
feel like that's ultimately what it comes down to. And they've got belief in themselves as players because otherwise they would have made changes. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that they haven't. I I don't feel they need roster changes at all. They've got
Yeah,
one of the
that's a
best
great
rosters in the
question from
world.
Jack in the chat, by the way. He just
Oh,
asked
so
the
he
same.
literally just
Yeah,
put
yeah,
that.
yeah, just the same thing.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, about the roster changes.
Do you think they need roster changes? No, for me, no. Look, you've got Hobbit that can step up. We saw him step up. You've got Shiro performing wonderfully,
Mm.
and you got Axile that was. Do you know what? Quite absent this major.
Yeah.
And what you've got here is you've got Axile that was in question. I feel like before going even into the major is like, is he top 3 rifler of the year?
Mhm.
Because performing incredibly well, incredibly consistent. He went missing in that quarterfinal against MOUZ. Like
Yeah.
he just went so far missing, and you can't have that. You
Yeah.
can't have your biggest star just disappear because Shiro isn't going to be enough. Hobbit dropped, tried his best. Bless him.
No,
Tried so
Hobbit
hard.
is an absolute gold, by the way. He's so
Yeah,
good. Like he is the guy that can go 0-20 until the end of the year in every single game, and no one's gonna say anything about it.
yeah. I just think I feel like it's a mentality thing in the team they need to address because
Mm.
when it comes to these big factors and yeah, I had a gut feeling that they were going to bottle it. I didn't think it would come in the quarters. I thought it would be in the semis, but damn, wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point with the roster there. I feel like what we're seeing now, and maybe this is what time passing and people forgetting how it used to be. I think what C9 are experiencing right now is what Astralis used to experience before they became Prime
Yeah,
Astralis, right? You remember
agreed.
all those talks, and it's kind of relevant when you think about the way that both teams are using, their players, and the way that Device was the best oper back
Mm,
then, and Shiro is one of the best opers right now. And everyone was saying, oh, I really want to see Device lift trophies. I really want to see this lineup playing that perfect CS lift trophies. They have all the bases covered. It's the same vibe I'm getting from C9 right now.
yeah,
Would I change Shiro? Absolutely. Hell no, he's one of the best players in the world. Would I change Axio? Yes, he might be going missing sometimes, but he's still, even if he's not a top 3 rifler because of his lack of consistency, you would still put him top 5 or top 7, right? He's
easily.
still
Yeah,
he's still a GOAT. Would you change Hobbit? Hell no, are you an idiot? I mean, this team wouldn't be functioning if it wasn't for Hobbit. Would you change Inters, one of the best support players in the world, if not the best support player in the world? No, you
no,
wouldn't. And the only person that was left in the discussion was Nafani before this major. And did he play really well with this major? Yes, he did. In a lot of the important games, Nafani was actually, he was able to not only keep his cool and still hold on to the structure, because I think that was one of the biggest problems for me watching C9. I just felt like every single time that shit would get outside of control, and there would start to be some problems, and water will start getting into the boat. Hobbit would be the only one to be able to drag the team
yeah,
out of there. But I feel like Nafani did that a couple times during this tournament, so I really don't think that changes are needed. I just think that they need to win one really tough game. Have a game that they think it's impossible to win in a final or a tournament or whatever. Win that tournament, and I feel like this is gonna just get them started, because I'm in love with that team as well. I love the way that they're playing CS. I think it's really, as much as they don't have an open IGL, it's really similar to what Jame is doing. Is the CAS style. They're just playing,
yeah. Agreed.
embracing the Zeus mythology stories, and I am a C9 fan. A little bit disappointed by what happened, but I think if we're speaking disappointments, we need to get into Na'Vi a little bit as well, because that felt like it was just destined to be their second major.
Navi, yeah. It's the whole Navi storyline's interesting. It's almost like, look, I feel like Electronic is still doing okay as an IGL. I felt like when that move happened, I was a bit like, oh, okay, that's interesting. We'll see how it develops. Obviously, had really good events off the back of him initially transitioning over. I feel like there's oh, I don't know. I feel like contextually, there's obviously a lot going on with that organization. Obviously, there's a lot of world circumstances, so it's very difficult for them to have full focus on
Mm,
CS. I
yeah,
feel like uh, I feel like it's very unfortunate,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's just a really just fucked up situation, and it's a shame it has come to this in 2022. But it kind of taking all that in face value and looking at Navi as a whole, it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. It's going to be interesting to see how many more events they will have with some Die Young. Is he going to be this permanent piece? Is he going to then drop out? But then if he drops, who do you get in? It's a very interesting one, and I feel like there's a lot of question marks over Navi right now. And I agree with you. Maybe it should have been their second major. I feel like this was. We'll talk about heroic, but I felt like this was heroic's best opportunity to win the major, just
Yeah,
flat out.
yeah,
But yeah, I there's a lot of question marks around Navi for me, and Simple didn't have his Simple-esque performance. And what's crazy to me is we're talking about all these players. We can bring them up in isolation. We've already spoken about Zaiwu. We haven't yet spoken about it, but we'll speak about K Serato.
yeah.
We
We
talked
spoke
about
about
Shiro.
Shiro.
We can talk about all of these players in isolation. And Brokey, right? We talked about Brokey and we said, okay, didn't have the best event. But that's by their standards. What's crazy is we've got so many players in the scene, in the tier one space, that can hit these incredible highs. And Simple is still playing well, but he's not playing as well as he normally does. And that's crazy to me. And I feel like what that just highlights as well. And I guess it's a full circle moment going back to the original question of was this major final boring? No, because it goes to show that anyone can beat anyone.
Mm,
And we're in the most competitive era of Counter-Strike we've ever been in.
yeah.
And if the trend is currently going that we're just going to keep getting more and more competitive, that is so exciting for the scene.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that it's funny to think about it because like obviously you can put it on the cards on the table and be like, okay, Simple didn't perform in the last major final that Navi played against FaZe, and this might have been the reason that Navi didn't win back then, might be the reason that they didn't win here. But when you look at all the factors, I could easily see another team that's going through the same things that those Navi players are speaking, like precisely about, let's say, Simple Bid, SDY as well, and plus the pressure that he doesn't know if he's going to be playing the next tournament with them either, even though I don't think he's the problem in the team. I think he's been doing a really solid job, but he's just the only one that they can replace, realistically. Uh, I feel like considering what kind of a hell on earth those guys have been going through outside of the game, it's still a miracle for me that they're able to be that competitive and still be
Agreed.
regarded as one of the best teams in the world. And I feel like people don't really emphasize on that a whole lot simply because of, how professional they've been with it. And
Yeah.
they've actually made people forget about that as a factor, sorry. And no, I still have my sickness kicking in sometimes, but they've made people forget about all of that's happening, right? And then you see them. It's not, well, you can't say, oh, you're just making an excuse. Hell, it is an excuse. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's not an excuse, what does an excuse mean? I mean, they're still able to play good CS. It is true that 9 out of 10 times Navi won't lose to Fury in playoff environment, right? Maybe this is the 10th time. Maybe this
Oh
is
my
the
god.
same time
Yeah.
when it's destined for Furia to win that game. And I was watching the game myself. I didn't realize what was going on. I was just hyped up by the atmosphere and everything. But in my head, if you ask me after the game, how did Furia win that game? I would be like, I have no idea, but they did. And
Yeah, it was an incredible atmosphere as well.
yeah,
And I don't know if that's something you want to talk about as well, just kind of the overall just atmosphere and the expectations of having the crowd there compared to kind of what it was and the whole environment. But those Furia games, oh my god! In terms of,
they were
I think
football games.
me and Lucy were talking about it, and we said that maybe not for competitiveness, but on pure atmosphere alone,
Oh
that
yeah,
is some of
yeah.
the best atmosphere I've ever seen in
Oh
a
no,
Counter
for
Strike.
competitiveness is absolutely terrifying for the players as well. I can tell you one thing for sure. They can't hear shit in their
Yeah, true.
headsets during those games. But it's still hell exciting.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but well, I guess that's enough for Navi. I think it's another team that I'd actually want to see. What do you think about SDY? Actually, that's the note I want to finish off on for Navi, because I really want to see SDY play more for them.
I feel like if you get rid of SDY, like who do you replace him with? I feel like they can't. I feel like I don't know who you would bring in. And I feel like it is, given the entire situation surrounding Boomich, it's an unfortunate piece for Navi to have lost because it was their IGL.
Mm,
And the fact that they are again performing to this competitive level, bearing in mind what we have touched upon briefly, I feel like they are working with the best that they can realistically get right now, and I think it's unfair to put all of the blame onto SDY.
yeah.
I feel like he has his moments where he looks a little bit lost and he isn't really too sure what he's doing. But there's other moments where he will have incredibly good games and he'll be there and he'll be a dependable piece of this Navi puzzle. So I'd like to see him at least see out the year and then they can kind of have a rethink into 2023. But I wouldn't be upset if he continued to play on the roster for a few more events at the start of the year.
Yeah, ideally, I was living in a world where Yekender goes into Navi and fills that gap, but I guess that's off the table now. But to finish it off strongly, we have the two, I'd say easily the two most entertaining teams to watch during the playoffs.
Yeah.
A lot of energy, Heroic and Furia. Any interesting takes on them?
I think I said it at the start, but I'll repeat myself. I
Mm,
predicted Heroic to win the major.
yeah,
I had them in my pick'ems. It was looking great. I mean, the pick'ems weren't looking good because I put Liquid through. But yeah, I mean, Heroic, interesting team. I watched them at the RMRs. The way that they're utilizing Yabi has been a lot more proactive, and they're actually setting himself up in the key like roles for him to get a multi kill. And he's been thriving in that environment. I mean, especially on Inferno, like they were having rounds on B where they were boosting him up, and they were having two players actually face into CT before the T's even were able to clear him, and then he'd be set up for success. They were playing double pit where Yabi would just tuck right into the wall, and they were setting him up constantly. And Caden in interviews was saying we're actually ahead of our development for Yabi.
yeah,
We didn't think that we would be at this stage. So if he said that like a month ago, then they've had a month to work on this. I was like, damn, the Heroic look this good already. Then they're gonna have another month to kind of prepare. I was like, I'm sold. Do you know what? Give me the Heroic red pill. Let's do it.
yeah,
They're gonna win the major. It'll be their best chance. And then all the legends started faltering, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be a genius. Then they made it through to the final after that semi-final game with Furia, where it was absolutely insane.
yeah,
Um, I feel like again we've mentioned it, but I just want to touch on it. Like Heroic, it's always this narrative of can they do it on land? Notoriously, they're not very good at the playoff stages. They kind of suck. You have this mentality to, yeah, you throw away the lead on Ancient, but then you win in overtime.
yeah,
Then you
which
go
is
to the third
harder.
map, and then you go to that third map, and you absolutely smash them in front of all of these fans in the arena. That narrative's gone now.
Yeah,
There's no way you can have that narrative anymore. And I was like, okay, whoever wins that game wins the major. And then obviously they didn't. I feel like that the final veto was a bit of a fumble, to be honest, on Heroic side. But just reflecting on Heroic in general, I felt they had a really good tournament, and the fact that they didn't click when it matters the most is very upsetting for them. But they've got a lot to be proud of. But it's an interesting point we discussed earlier where we said, is KD going to sit here and think, damn, was that my only opportunity now to win a major? It's an interesting one.
I'm sad about it, but I think it is, and that's a thing that
Yeah.
I was discussing with a friend of mine just the day before the major. We had a bit of a Bulgarian podcast with a couple friends that are I guess you could say esports journalists and analysts and all of that, and this is something that we actually discussed. The fact that out of 10 players in this final, Caden is probably the only one who's gonna look at this major and be like, "Oh, dang, that was my one go," right?
Yeah.
It might happen again, but I don't think it will. I really feel like everything aligned for him. In the meantime, it's really sad because I feel like Outsiders is. I think there's one team and one team only that could have beaten Outsiders in this final, and that was Navi. I don't see any other
Yeah.
team that was in the playoffs beating Outsiders in the grand final. I just feel like no one else would have been able to match their preparation for the game and James brains and keep their calm, because after the game we even heard Cadian saying they just completely outmaneuvered us. Like we had no idea what was going on, and it wasn't even that deep, right? It was
Yeah.
him saying Well, sometimes in CS, when you die, you gotta you gotta give the information to your teammate and be like, okay, the bad guy can do that and that, so you can do that. Or when you're in a man disadvantage situation and you want to do a play, you can communicate it with your teammate, tell him what to do, how to set you up. And he was like, and those are basics, right? Especially when we're speaking tier 1 CS, that shouldn't even be in the discussion. And he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, we like those things. So apparently pressure was a bit of an issue in the final for them. This is the thing that I'm getting out of what he said in the post game interview. But I still feel like that was a really successful tournament. I love the way that Yabi played in that tournament
Yeah.
as well. To be fair, I think that I haven't really been the biggest fan of Yabi until now, but the fact that he was able to replace Refresh, who's a really well seasoned, lurking guy, a really well seasoned clutcher, and all of those, and actually do a really good job. And I feel like the ceiling for him might even be a little bit higher because he hasn't really been given the chances that Refresh had for so many years in top level of Danish CS. I think that Yabi is now proving to be the right addition to Heroic, and I really hope this is not going to be the last chance for Cadian, although I believe it is. But I feel like from now on, the mission that Cadian has ahead of himself as a player and as an IGO is to just make sure that this core of the 4 guys, bar him in the team, is going to stay together, because those 4 could have the future of Danish CS in the palm of their hands, because they were hella good.
Yeah, I feel like one player that needs more praise that doesn't often get his flowers would be Shush,
Yeah,
because
I was so sure. I'm actually really glad you bring that one up.
he is a incredibly like understated
Mm.
player. It's not a case of underrated, they're understated. This man does his role superbly, very dependable pair of hands. Very impressed with him throughout the entire event, and it's unfortunate for Heroic, but sometimes look, that's just the way it happens. And yeah, it's rough, but I feel like that they've answered some critics. They've answered probably some demons with themselves with that Furia semi-final, and hopefully it means they can push forward into other tournaments and have more success in deep runs.
Yeah, hopefully. I think that a lot of people realize that Heroic is a really entertaining team to watch. If you're even if you're not the biggest fan of the team itself and the players, they're still entertaining the way that they approach the game. But speaking of entertainment, and the homecomers of this major, I thought that it would only be suitable to end it with them. Furia, a team that was the main reason for this major to be as exciting as it was. Watching a lot of those games, I think the Furia Navi and the Furia Heroic games are going to be written down in the history of CSGO as 2 of the most electrifying games to watch for sure. Maybe the level of CS wasn't the highest that we've seen. It wasn't the cleanest. Might have been a little bit scrappy, but it was hella nice to watch. So, any thoughts? If you had to make a bit of an abridgment on what kind of a tournament did Furia have?
I felt that this was the most complete Furia we've seen
Yeah,
yet. Because you had every single element of Furia stepping up, and also structurally, they looked like they'd refined a lot of things. And it wasn't just this aggressive art will go for an information play. Don't get me wrong, there was elements of that, but for example, safe. It felt like there were question marks of him coming into not only the RMR but the major itself, saying, "Okay, is he actually going to become this player?" Because when you talk about Furia, there's always a man that keeps coming back in the conversation of Furia, and this is how long of a lasting impact he had when Furia rises to the top, and that's Henny.
mm.
People were saying we still need to replace Henny. When Henny left, Art became the AWPer. Art became this player, and now you've brought in Safe. You bring him in, and people are saying, well, he's still not Henny, and he doesn't need to be Henny. But the fact that he is now, I feel like, become a lot more comfortable in the way that Furia play, and I also think that Furia have really brought, like, not completely, but they've stopped playing as aggressive. And not every round is an aggressive play. And that just suits Safe a lot more. I feel like Safe is a lot more comfortable in the structure of the team. I felt like Drop, especially, oh my god, against Na'Vi, he was absolutely insane.
Yeah, people are
Um,
actually shit talking on Drop so much, and I actually loved his tournament there. I think he did a hella good job.
yeah, and I was so impressed with him. And K Serato, Freddie left it saying he's the best rifler in the world. Incredibly good event. Like that, this guy is the future of Brazilian CS. Furia is the future of Brazilian CS, and I'm just happy that not only did they show up, they made it all the way to a semi, but they did it in a convincing manner. I was very impressed with the way that Furia played this event.
Yeah, I think that Yuri and K-Serata proved to be, the uh, the next big duo coming in from the Brazilian scene. K-Serata is easily modern day Cold Zero right now.
Yeah, yeah.
He is that big star of the Brazilian scene, and he is that much better than anybody else. And obviously, you have Yuri being the solid number two. You could, I guess, look at him as like a fur, maybe, if you wanted to, go the luminosity way. But yeah, it's been really impressive for Fury, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them play other tournaments. I really hope that they're going to be able to get some nice wins outside of Brazil, when they don't have the crowd backing them up, because I feel like that played a massive role for them. And I really want to see K-Serata playing the way that he did, because he was the only person that actually made people, after getting eliminated playing against him or after winning against him, just going on Twitter and being like, K-Serata is a fucking god. So many people did that playing against him. And this is impressive, when you're getting praises from the enemy players. You're not getting praises from the community. You're not getting praises from your fans. You're getting praises from the people that you just beat or just beat you in the server. And this is the biggest compliment for a player, because those are the guys that really understand what it feels like to be in the server. They really understand the game. So when a person like Stown goes out and goes like, you know what, K-Serata is one of the best players I've ever faced, that has some weight to it, right? When you hear it from a player like Stown. And that's why I really hope that they do well as well. I feel like that wraps it up pretty nicely for all of the teams. I don't think we've missed anybody. We try to be as in depth as possible. And in true TED Talk tradition, we did go above 2 hours, which is normally what happens. Now, sadly, Brandon, you told me that you really wanted to do a tier list going into this one. Sadly, I didn't really have a tier list prepared for today.
It's all good.
But you know what? I promise that I'm gonna have you on the show a second time. Maybe with Lucy when she's free as well.
That sounds good.
I'm gonna have you on the show for a second time in the near future, maybe the next month or the next 2 months, and I'm gonna have a special tier list prepared for you. I'm gonna try and think of one of the most exciting tier lists that I can come up with, and I'm gonna have it up.
All right, yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, on that note, I think we can end it here. Obviously, I don't think you have another plug bar your Twitter right now.
No.
Okay.
It's all good. Just my Twitter.
Okay, so you can see his Twitter below his lovely face. It's at BDog csgo. Follow him there. You can catch him on. People can actually catch you on quite a lot of casts, right? You're doing CCT. You're working with ESL. Did some We Play Academy League. We had that talk in the beginning, so you can catch Brandon on a whole lot of tournaments.
We're here and there.
Yeah, mate. Thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that you enjoyed your stay as well. And
I have. Thank you for having me, and thank you for finally getting me on, because I know you've been well, we've been trying to sort this out for a little bit, so I'm glad the schedule's been aligned.
Yeah, we have been, but it's good. What I love saying, we have that really good Bulgarian saying is, if your biggest problem is that you don't have enough time because of work, then you don't have any problems. So that's all right. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching as well. For those of you that are watching maybe this episode on YouTube, you should know that we're streaming all of those. So you can follow me on Twitch, on twitch.tv/TEDCS_, and you can watch all of those live. Subscribe to my channel, I guess, because I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers until the end of the year. I'm on 823 right now or something like that. I think it's doable. Might not be. We'll see. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and you can let us know which was your biggest disappointment throughout this major down below in the comments, and well, which was the team that did impress you the most. And please don't say Outsiders, because we already said that. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you really, really soon in another episode of the TED Talk podcast, or a surprising interview. Bye-bye.